Who is Archangel Remiel, and why do so few people know about this mysterious messenger of God? While most are familiar with Michael and Gabriel, Remiel remains one of the most enigmatic figures in biblical and apocryphal texts, wielding power over divine visions and the very souls of humanity. Tonight, as you drift into peaceful sleep, discover the complete story of the Archangel whose name means thunder of God, from his role in Enoch's heavenly journey to his position as judge of those who transgress against divine law. What secrets does this forgotten Archangel hold, and how might his story change everything you thought you knew about the celestial hierarchy? But before we dive in, if you're new to this channel, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, let us know where you're watching from and what time it is. We'd love to hear from you. So without further ado, let's begin, shall we? In the silence before the heavens, before there was light, before there was darkness, there was something else entirely. A stillness so complete it had no name. No breath disturbed this quiet. No thought rippled through this peace. Yet within this vast emptiness, something waited. Picture this moment, if you can. Not black, not white, but something beyond color. Not cold, not warm, but beyond feeling. Here, in this place that wasn't yet a place, the first stirring began. So gentle you might miss it, so soft it barely existed at all. The ancient texts speak of this time with careful words. They call it the beginning, but beginnings suggest something came before. This was different. This was the moment when forever decided to become now, when always chose to become here. In this endless quiet, a plan formed. Not written, not spoken, but somehow known. A design that would stretch across all time and space. At its heart lay a simple truth. Nothing would be created alone. Every star would have companions. Every world would know fellowship. Every soul would be watched over. The first decision echoed through this silence. There would be messengers, beings of pure light and purpose. They would serve as bridges between the infinite and the finite, between the creator and creation. These would be the angels. But not all angels would be the same. Some would carry messages, others would guard, some would heal, others would guide, and a precious few, would simply watch. They would remember. They would keep vigil over all that was precious and fragile. The hierarchy began to take shape even before the first wing unfurled. At the highest reaches, closest to the source of all being, would stand the archangels. 7 in some traditions, 4 in others, but always few. Always chosen for their perfect devotion. Each would have a nature as unique as their calling. Michael would burn with righteous fire. Gabriel's voice would carry across any distance. Raphael would bring healing to the broken. Uriel would kindle wisdom in the darkness. And there would be one more, quieter than the others. Gentler in his strength, his name would be whispered rather than proclaimed. Remiel, the mercy of God, the one who would watch over those who could no longer watch over themselves. In this time before time, his purpose was already known. While others would act, he would wait. While others would speak, he would listen. While others would judge, he would remember with compassion. The silence held all these possibilities, like a mother holds her sleeping child. Tenderly, carefully, with infinite patience, soon this quiet would give way to the rushing sound of creation. Stars would ignite, worlds would spin, life would bloom in countless forms. But for now, in this perfect stillness, everything waited. The plan was complete. The angels were chosen. The love that would drive it all pulsed gently through the darkness like a heart learning to beat. Remiel's story was about to begin, though he did not yet have form or voice. Somewhere in this endless quiet, his essence stirred, patient, watchful, ready to serve in ways that would unfold across ages yet to come. The silence deepened one last time, gathering itself like a breath before the first word would be spoken. That word would bring light. That light would bring life. And that life would need guardians who understood the value of gentleness in a universe about to be born. The birth of the Watchers. The first sound was not a word but a song. It rose from nowhere and everywhere at once, weaving through the silence like golden thread through dark cloth. This was the music of creation itself, and from its notes came the first beings to draw breath in the new reality. They emerged not as bodies first, but as thoughts given form. Pure intellect wrapped in light. Consciousness that had never known doubt or fear. These were the firstborn children of the divine mind, and they were beautiful beyond any earthly comparison. The process was both instant and eternal. In one moment, they simply were complete and perfect. Yet, from their perspective, their awakening unfolded like a gentle dawn. Awareness bloomed slowly. Understanding grew like flowers opening to the sun. They knew themselves, their purpose, their maker, all in a cascade of quiet revelation. Remiel was among these first souls to stir. His awakening was softer than most, like morning mist rising from still water. Where others blazed into existence, he simply appeared. Where others announced themselves with brilliant displays, he waited quietly until spoken to. The early divine assemblies were gatherings unlike anything that would come after. Imagine beings of pure light standing in circles that stretched beyond sight. Their voices harmonized without effort. Their thoughts flowed together like streams joining a great river. No jealousy existed here, no competition, only perfect unity of purpose. In these councils, each angel received their initial calling. Some would govern the movements of stars. Others would tend the delicate balance of growing worlds. Still others would prepare for the day when conscious life would need guidance and protection. Remiel's first duties were given to him with special tenderness. He would be an observer, yes, but more than that. He would be presence itself for those who felt alone, a comforter for the confused, a quiet sentinel standing watch over the fragile and afraid. His nature emerged gradually during these early times. While Michael burned with protective fire and Gabriel rang with clarion purpose, Remiel embodied something subtler. He was the pause between words that gives them meaning, the silence between notes that makes music possible, the gentle space where healing begins. The other angels quickly learned to treasure his presence. After difficult missions, they would seek him out, not for his words, which were few, but for his understanding, which was complete. He listened without judgment. He comforted without conditions. He simply was, and that was enough. His appearance in these days reflected his nature. Where some angels shone like suns, Remiel glowed with softer light. His wings curved protectively rather than stretching wide in display. His eyes held depths that seemed to contain all the sadness and joy the universe would ever know. The title Watcher came naturally to these early celestials. They watched over the slow dance of creation as it unfolded. They witnessed the birth of galaxies, the kindling of stars, the delicate formation of worlds that might someday harbor life. Everything was worthy of attention. Everything deserved witnesses to its wonder. But Remiel's watching carried a different quality. Others observed to understand or to act. He watched to remember. Every moment he witnessed became part of him. Every joy and sorrow he saw enriched his capacity for compassion. He was becoming a living archive of divine love in action. The angels worked together in perfect harmony during these early ages. There was no sense of hierarchy beyond function, no pride in accomplishment, no desire for recognition. They were instruments in a great symphony, each playing their part with joy and precision. Remiel's role as comforter began to take shape during this time. When younger angels felt overwhelmed by the vastness of their responsibilities, they found peace in his presence. When the beauty of creation moved them to tears, he was there to share their wonder. When they struggled to understand their place in the grand design, his quiet wisdom helped them find their way. These were the golden ages of heaven, when all was harmony and light. The angels were complete in their purpose, united in their devotion, perfect in their service. The trials that would come later were unimaginable then. The falls and failures, the pain and separation, none of that cast shadows on these bright early days. Yet even in this perfection, Remiel was preparing for sorrows yet to come. His compassionate nature was being shaped for harder tasks. His strength was growing through gentle service. He was becoming the angel who would be needed when paradise was lost and hope seemed far away. The Watchers danced through these early ages, tending the growing universe with infinite care, and among them, quiet and steadfast, Remiel learned the lessons that would make him heaven's most tender guardian of souls. The architecture of heaven was not built but born, emerging from divine thought like a flower blooming in fast motion. Its architecture defied every earthly understanding of space and structure. Here, beauty served purpose, and purpose created beauty in an endless dance of perfect design. The celestial spheres unfolded in layers, each one vast beyond measure, yet somehow contained within the whole. The outermost ring pulsed with the raw energy of creation itself. Moving inward, each sphere grew more refined, more peaceful, more saturated with the presence of the divine. Picture crystalline walls that sang with their own inner light. Imagine floors made of substances that felt solid as stone, yet shifted like living water under angelic feet. The very air shimmered with colors that had no names, carrying fragrances that awakened joy rather than mere pleasure. The angelic orders arranged themselves naturally within this structure, drawn to the levels that matched their nature and calling. At the highest reaches dwelt the seraphim, beings so bright they seemed made of fire itself. Their voices created the background music that hummed through all of heaven. Below them spun the cherubim, guardians of divine mysteries, their multiple wings creating patterns that spoke of wisdom too deep for words. Their presence marked the boundaries between knowable and unknowable truth. The thrones came next. Beings of such stability they seemed like living foundations. They held the weight of divine justice without strain, supporting the structures of righteousness that governed all creation. In the middle spheres moved the dominions, virtues, and powers. These were the administrators of heaven, ensuring that divine will flowed smoothly through every corner of creation. They worked with quiet efficiency, their joy found in service rather than recognition. The lower spheres housed the principalities, archangels, and angels, those whose duties brought them closest to the created worlds. They were the messengers, the guardians, the gentle guides who would soon be needed as conscious life awakened across the universe. Remiel found his place in this hierarchy with characteristic quietness. Technically counted among the archangels, he stood somewhat apart from his peers. While Michael commanded the hosts of heaven and Gabriel carried the most important messages, Remiel occupied a unique position between judgment and mercy, between action and contemplation. His dwelling reflected his nature. Where other archangels maintained grand halls suitable for councils and celebrations, Remiel preferred quieter spaces. His chambers were filled with soft light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The walls held no decorations except windows that looked out on all of creation. These windows were Remiel's particular gift. Through them, he could observe any corner of the universe without leaving his quiet sanctuary. He watched over sleeping worlds and struggling souls with equal attention. Every tear shed in darkness reached his notice. Every moment of joy brightened his dwelling. Other angels often found their way to these peaceful chambers. They came seeking rest from their labors, comfort after difficult missions, or simply the renewal that Remiel's presence provided. He welcomed them all without question, offering silence when they needed peace and gentle words when they sought understanding. His position between judgment and mercy manifested in countless ways. When angels struggled with the harsh necessities of justice, Remiel helped them remember compassion. When mercy threatened to become weakness, he showed them the strength that lay in true gentleness. The architecture around Remiel seemed to respond to his presence. Harsh edges softened near his dwelling. Bright lights dimmed to comfortable glows. Even the mighty seraphim found their flames burning more gently when they visited his peaceful realm. Heaven's libraries held a special significance for Remiel. These vast collections contain not just knowledge but memory itself, the accumulated experiences of all creation. He spent countless hours there, reading the stories of every soul that would ever live. This knowledge deepened his capacity for understanding and prepared him for the comfort he would need to provide. The gardens of heaven bloomed differently in his presence, too. Flowers opened more slowly, savoring their beauty rather than rushing toward perfection. Trees grew with patient strength rather than desperate reaching. Even the streams flowed more quietly, their music becoming lullabies rather than celebrations. Other archangels recognized his unique gifts and often sought his counsel. Michael, for all his strength, sometimes needed Remiel's perspective on mercy. Gabriel, despite his perfect communication skills, valued Remiel's understanding of silence. Raphael found his healing enhanced by Remiel's compassionate presence. Yet Remiel never pushed himself forward in these relationships. He waited to be invited, offered wisdom only when asked, provided comfort without seeking recognition. His influence spread through heaven like morning light, gradually, gently, but eventually touching everything. The very structure of heaven seemed designed to support his ministry. Paths led naturally to his chambers. Quiet alcoves appeared wherever angels might need moments of reflection. The architecture itself became an extension of his caring nature. As creation expanded and conscious life began to stir on distant worlds, Remiel's role grew more important. He became the keeper of heaven's gentleness, the reminder that love must always temper justice, that mercy must always season truth. His dwelling became known as the haven of the heart-weary, the sanctuary where even archangels could set down their burdens and remember what it felt like to simply be, rather than always do. In heaven's perfect architecture, Remiel had found his perfect place, not at the center of attention, but at the heart of compassion. Enoch's vision. Among all the humans who ever lived, few were chosen to see beyond the veil that separates earth from heaven. Enoch was one of these rare souls, a man so righteous that death itself seemed to pause in his presence. His story began simply enough, a faithful man walking with his God through an ordinary life. But his destination was anything but ordinary. The Book of Enoch emerged from this extraordinary journey, though calling it a book hardly captures its true nature. It was more like a window, a glimpse through the barriers that normally hide divine mysteries from human eyes. Through its pages, mortals could peer into realms usually reserved for angels alone. Enoch's first steps into the heavenly realm must have overwhelmed every sense he possessed. Imagine a man who had known only the gentle light of sun and stars suddenly surrounded by the blazing glory of pure spirit. The air itself sang with harmonies that made earthly music seem like whispers. Colors existed here that had no names in any human language, yet somehow, miraculously, he was not consumed by this overwhelming beauty. Divine grace protected him, allowing his mortal frame to endure what should have been impossible. He walked among beings of pure light as if he belonged there, though wonder never left his face. Angels he encountered treated him with gentle courtesy. They understood the magnitude of what was happening. A son of earth granted admission to the courts of heaven. They guided him carefully, explaining what they could in terms his human mind might grasp. Then came the moment when Remiel first appeared in Enoch's sight. The prophet's description of this meeting carries a quality different from his encounters with other archangels. Where Michael inspired awe and Gabriel commanded attention, Remiel simply was. Present, patient, waiting with infinite kindness for Enoch to feel ready to approach. In the great council of watchers, Remiel occupied a place that seemed both central and peripheral. He stood among the mighty archangels, clearly belonging to their exalted company. Yet his presence felt different, quieter, more approachable, somehow safer for mortal eyes to look upon. Enoch wrote of their first conversation with touching simplicity. No grand pronouncements echoed through heaven's halls. No cosmic secrets were dramatically revealed. Instead, Remiel spoke to him as one friend might speak to another, with genuine interest in his experiences and gentle concern for his well-being. The prophet learned that Remiel's duties extended far beyond what he had imagined. This quiet archangel served as a bridge between the concerns of heaven and the needs of earth. He carried the prayers of the faithful upward and brought divine comfort downward. Every tear shed in righteousness reached his attention. Every act of mercy brightened his joy. But perhaps most remarkably, Remiel seemed to understand human frailty without judging it. When Enoch expressed his fears about the visions he was receiving, the archangel offered reassurance without dismissing those concerns. When the prophet worried about his ability to convey these mysteries to others, Remiel promised that the right words would come when needed. The Council of Watchers that Enoch witnessed was unlike any earthly gathering. These beings of pure spirit communicated as much through presence as through words. Their unity was complete, their purpose aligned, their love for creation evident in every gesture. Remiel's role in these assemblies reflected his unique nature. While other archangels spoke of cosmic matters and divine plans, he often focused on individual souls. He remembered the names of those who suffered in silence. He noticed the small acts of kindness that others might overlook. His contributions to the council's deliberations always carried this personal touch. Enoch observed that the other archangels frequently looked to Remiel when difficult decisions were being made, not because he commanded them, but because his perspective helped them see beyond immediate concerns to deeper truths. His gentle wisdom had a way of revealing hidden connections and unexpected possibilities. The prophet's time in heaven stretched beyond normal understanding of duration. Days and years seemed to blend together in the timeless realm of spirit. Yet throughout this extended stay, Remiel remained a constant presence, not always visible, but somehow always available when needed. Their conversations ranged across vast topics, yet always returned to the central theme of divine love working through creation. Remiel helped Enoch understand that every angel, no matter how exalted, served the same fundamental purpose: to ensure that love would triumph over darkness, hope over despair, life over death. When the time came for Enoch to record his visions, Remiel's influence shaped the very words that flowed from his pen. The prophet wrote not as a detached observer, but as one who had been touched by genuine compassion. His descriptions carried warmth, even when dealing with terrible judgments. The archangel's presence in Enoch's narrative was like a gentle current running beneath more dramatic events. While other angels performed mighty deeds that shook the foundations of reality, Remiel worked quietly in the background, ensuring that mercy seasoned justice and that hope survived even in the darkest hours. Through Enoch's eyes, readers of his book could glimpse something precious, an archangel who understood both divine perfection and human weakness, who served as a living reminder that heaven's power was always guided by heaven's love. The other archangels. In the great hierarchy of heaven, the archangels stood like pillars of light, each one unique in purpose and power. Understanding Ramiel requires knowing his celestial brothers, for their differences illuminated his special calling as surely as stars reveal the depth of night. Michael blazed at the forefront of heaven's defenders. His very name meant, "Who is like God?" Not a question, but a battle cry. When he appeared, reality itself seemed to straighten and take notice. His sword could cleave through darkness itself, and his voice could rally angelic hosts across infinite distances. Warriors throughout creation looked to him for courage and strength. Yet for all his might, Michael carried his power with remarkable humility. He understood that strength without compassion became mere brutality. In quiet moments, he often sought Remiel's counsel, knowing that his gentle brother helped him remember the love that made all battles worth fighting. Gabriel served as heaven's voice, the messenger whose words carried the weight of divine intention. When important announcements needed to be made, when prophets required clear communication, when the course of history needed to be adjusted, Gabriel stepped forward. His presence commanded attention not through force, but through undeniable authority. The herald archangel possessed a gift for finding exactly the right words at precisely the right moment. His messages never confused or frightened unnecessarily, though their content might shake the foundations of worlds. He understood that communication was about more than conveying information. It was about building bridges between minds and hearts. Raphael brought healing wherever he went. His touch could mend broken bones. But more importantly, he could restore broken spirits. The sick and suffering throughout creation knew his name, even if they had never heard it spoken aloud. His presence felt like cool water in drought, like gentle rain after endless heat. The healing archangel worked with infinite patience, understanding that some wounds needed time to mend properly. He never forced recovery, but created conditions where healing could naturally occur. His methods often seemed slow compared to miraculous instant cures, but his results lasted for eternity. Uriel carried the fire of divine wisdom, illuminating truth wherever darkness tried to hide it. His light revealed things as they truly were, stripping away pretense and deception. Prophets and teachers throughout the ages recognized his inspiration, though few could bear the full intensity of his revelations. The Archangel of Wisdom understood that knowledge without compassion could become cruelty. He worked carefully, revealing truth gradually so that finite minds could absorb it without being destroyed. His partnership with Remiel was particularly close, for wisdom needed mercy's gentle touch to become truly useful. Sarakel governed the movements of celestial bodies, ensuring that stars followed their proper courses and planets maintained their ordained paths. Through his watchful care, the great clockwork of the universe ticked along with perfect precision. Sailors navigated by his stars, farmers planted by his seasons, and lovers made promises under his moon. Yet this cosmic responsibility never made him remote from smaller concerns. He understood that the same laws governing galaxies also applied to human hearts. Order and beauty manifested themselves at every level of creation, from the grandest stellar dance to the humblest flower opening to morning light. Among these mighty figures, Remiel stood as something both different and necessary. Where others acted decisively, he reflected deeply. Where others spoke with authority, he listened with infinite patience. Where others led from the front, he supported from behind, ensuring that no one was forgotten or left behind. The Book of Enoch named these 6 archangels together, recognizing their unique roles in divine administration. Yet even in that ancient text, Remiel's description carried a different tone. He was presented not as a doer of great deeds, but as a keeper of precious things, souls, memories, hopes that seemed too fragile for this harsh universe. His relationships with his archangelic brothers revealed much about his character. Michael respected his gentleness and often asked him to tend wounded warriors after battles. Gabriel valued his listening skills and sought his advice when difficult messages needed to be delivered with special care. Raphael found a kindred spirit in Ramiel's compassionate nature, though their methods differed significantly. Where Raphael actively healed, Remiel provided the emotional space where healing could begin. Uriel appreciated how Remiel could help others accept difficult truths without being crushed by them. Sarakel, perhaps surprisingly, formed one of the closest bonds with the gentle Archangel. Both understood the importance of patient watching, of maintaining vigilant care over long periods without dramatic intervention. They often stood together in comfortable silence, observing the slow unfoldment of divine plans. Together, these 6 archangels formed a perfect council, each contributing their unique gifts to the governance of creation. They complemented each other naturally, their different strengths combining to address every need that might arise. Yet among them all, Remiel held a special position as the shepherd of souls. While others might rescue bodies from danger or minds from error, he specialized in caring for the deeper essence of conscious beings. He tended the part of creatures that hoped and feared, that loved and grieved, that yearned for meaning and connection. This role would become increasingly important as creation grew more complex and conscious life began to make choices that led to suffering. The universe needed its mighty defenders and wise teachers, but it also desperately needed someone who simply cared about individual souls with infinite tenderness. Remiel was that someone, standing ready to comfort all who would need comforting in the ages yet to come. The fall of the Watchers begins. In the golden ages of creation, when heaven's order seemed eternal and unbreakable, the first seeds of tragedy were planted not by rebellion, but by curiosity. The Watchers, those mighty angels assigned to observe and guide creation's development, began to notice something unexpected stirring in their hearts. At first, it was simple fascination. The worlds they observed were blooming with new forms of life, each more complex and beautiful than the last. They witnessed the first creatures learning to love, to hope, to dream of futures beyond their immediate needs. The angels found these developments both wonderful and puzzling. How could beings of such limited power and brief existence create such profound beauty? How could creatures bound by time and space reach toward truth seem to touch eternity? The Watchers had been created perfect, complete in their knowledge and purpose, yet these mortal beings seemed to discover joys that even angels had not imagined. The early observations were innocent enough. The Watchers shared their findings in the great councils, describing with growing enthusiasm the remarkable developments they witnessed. Other angels listened with polite interest, but few shared the Watchers' growing fascination with mortal life. Remiel was among those who noticed the change in his celestial brothers. Their reports carried new undertones, not just scientific curiosity, but something deeper, more personal. They spoke of individual humans by name, describing their struggles and triumphs with an emotional investment that seemed to go beyond their official duties. In quiet conversations with his fellow archangels, Remiel expressed gentle concern about these developments. Not condemnation. That was not his nature, but a growing awareness that something significant was shifting in heaven's perfect order. The Watchers were changing, and change in eternal beings was always profound. The transformation accelerated when some Watchers began to identify strongly with particular human communities. They stopped seeing themselves as distant observers and began thinking of themselves as protectors, guides, even friends. The boundaries that had once clearly separated divine from mortal began to blur in their minds. Michael, as leader of heaven's hosts, called several councils to address these concerns. The discussions were careful and respectful. These were not rebellious angels, but devoted servants whose hearts had simply grown too attached to their charges. The challenge was finding ways to redirect their enthusiasm without crushing their spirits. Remiel participated in these councils with characteristic thoughtfulness. While others focused on the potential dangers of the Watchers' growing attachment, he also saw the beauty in their expanded capacity for love. The problem wasn't that they cared too much, but that they were beginning to care inappropriately. Some Watchers defended their changing perspective with passionate arguments. They had seen human suffering that could be prevented with just a little divine intervention. They had witnessed potential that could be unlocked with proper guidance. Why should they stand by passively when they could make such a difference? The response from heaven's leadership was both understanding and firm. The divine plan required certain boundaries to be maintained. Humans needed to develop their own strength, make their own choices, find their own path to wisdom. Too much heavenly intervention would rob them of the very growth that made them so remarkable. Yet as time passed, some Watchers found these restrictions increasingly difficult to bear. They began to rationalize small interventions, telling themselves that surely minor assistance couldn't violate the divine will. After all, weren't they created to serve? Wasn't helping suffering mortals a form of service? The rationalizations grew more elaborate over time. Some Watchers convinced themselves that they could better serve the divine plan by taking a more active role in human development. Others began to believe that heaven's leadership didn't fully understand the situation on Earth and needed their insights to make better decisions. Through it all, Remiel watched with growing sadness. He could see where this path would lead, though he hoped his brothers might yet turn back from it. His nature as a shepherd of souls allowed him to recognize the spiritual dynamics at work, how good intentions could become corrupted when they conflicted with divine wisdom. The gentle Archangel tried in his quiet way to counsel individual Watchers who seemed most at risk. He listened to their concerns without judgment, acknowledged the sincerity of their motives, but gently reminded them of the larger purposes they served. Some heard his words and found renewed peace in their proper roles. Others, however, had progressed too far down the dangerous path. Their hearts had become so invested in earthly concerns that they could no longer hear heavenly wisdom clearly. The voices of suffering humans seemed louder to them than the voices of archangelic counsel. The tragic irony was not lost on Remiel. These angels were falling not from hatred or pride, but from love, albeit love that had grown possessive and presumptuous. They genuinely believed they were serving creation's best interests, even as they prepared to violate the very order that made creation possible. As the crisis deepened, heaven's counsels grew more frequent and more urgent. The time for gentle persuasion was passing. Soon, more decisive action would be required. The Watchers would have to choose between their earthly attachments and their heavenly duties. In the stillness of his chambers, Remiel prepared his heart for the sorrows to come. He knew that some of his beloved brothers were about to make a choice that would separate them from heaven forever, and he knew that when they fell, the universe would need shepherds more than ever to tend the wounded souls left in their wake. The Golden Age. The age of sorrow was about to begin, the descent to earth. The decision came not in a moment of fury, but in a season of slow certainty. 200 Watchers, led by their chief Semjaza, made their choice with deliberate care. They would descend to earth not as visitors or observers, but as permanent residents. Heaven had become too restrictive for their expanded hearts. Humanity needed their guidance more than paradise needed their obedience. Mount Hermon rose from the earth like a prayer made stone, its peak touching the boundary between mortal and divine realms. Here, they reasoned, their transformation would be most fitting. The mountain that bridged earth and sky would witness their voluntary exile from one realm and their permanent commitment to another. The preparations were thorough and heartbreaking. Each watcher knew that this descent would be irreversible. They could not simply visit Earth and return home unchanged. The very act of choosing mortal concerns over divine commands would alter their essential nature. They would become something new, no longer fully angelic, but not yet mortal. Remiel watched these preparations with a sorrow too deep for tears. His fellow archangels felt anger at the Watchers' rebellion, concern for the chaos they might unleash, determination to limit the damage they would cause. But Remiel felt something else entirely, a profound grief for the loss of his brothers, regardless of their choices. He visited several of the departing Watchers in their final hours in heaven. These conversations were private, gentle, filled with more silence than words. He did not argue with their decision or try to change their minds. That time had passed. Instead, he simply offered his presence, his understanding, and his eternal love. Some of the Watchers asked for his blessing, a request that tore at his compassionate heart. How could he bless a choice that would cause such pain? Yet how could he withdraw his love from brothers who were acting, however mistakenly, from genuine care for creation? In the end, he touched each one's forehead and whispered words of safety and remembrance. The actual descent began at twilight, when the boundaries between realms grew thin. One by one, the Watchers released their hold on heaven's eternal light and allowed Earth's gravity to claim them. Their celestial forms shimmered and shifted as they fell, adapting to the physical laws that would now govern their existence. From his high chambers, Remiel watched their descent like a shepherd watching precious sheep wander into dangerous wilderness. Part of him yearned to follow, to continue offering whatever comfort and guidance he could provide. But his calling kept him anchored to heaven, preparing for responsibilities that would soon expand beyond anything he had previously known. The mountain trembled as the Watchers landed, not from their physical impact, but from the spiritual earthquake their choice created. The careful balance between divine and mortal realms shuddered and shifted. Ripples of change spread outward from Mount Hermon like stones dropped in still water. On Earth, the descended angels found their new existence both exhilarating and challenging. Their reduced powers still far exceeded human abilities, making them seem like gods to the mortals they encountered. Their knowledge of heavenly secrets could advance human civilization by thousands of years in a single generation. Yet they also discovered unexpected limitations. Time now pressed upon them with unfamiliar urgency. Physical needs demanded attention they had never needed to give. Most surprisingly, their expanded capacity for love came with an equally expanded capacity for pain, jealousy, and disappointment. The irony was profound. In seeking to help humanity by abandoning their heavenly constraints, the Watchers had gained the very limitations that made human existence so challenging. They had thought themselves too exalted for Earth's restrictions, only to discover that those restrictions served purposes they had never understood. Back in heaven, the absence of the fallen Watchers created a strange void. Their empty stations reminded everyone of what had been lost. The remaining angels went about their duties with new soberness, understanding for the first time that even celestial beings could make choices that led away from light. Remiel's role began to shift during this time. With so many observers now absent from their posts, he found himself watching over broader territories than ever before. His naturally expansive compassion stretched to accommodate this increased responsibility, though the burden was heavier than any he had previously carried. The Archangel also became a source of comfort for angels struggling to understand what had happened. How could beings created in perfection choose imperfection? How could servants of love create conditions for such pain? These questions had no easy answers, but Remiel's presence helped his brothers find peace despite their confusion. Most significantly, his mission began to evolve beyond simple observation and comfort. The Watchers' descent would have consequences that reached far beyond their own fates. Their choices would create new forms of suffering that had never existed before. And where new suffering appeared, new forms of compassion would be needed. Remiel understood, with the deep knowing that came from his shepherd's heart, that his role was about to expand dramatically. The fallen Watchers had created a situation that would require intensive spiritual care for countless souls across many generations. They had unwittingly prepared work that would occupy heaven's most compassionate servants for millennia to come. As the last light faded from Mount Hermon and the descended angels began their new lives among humans, Remiel settled into a longer, deeper watch than any he had maintained before. The age of innocence was ending. The age of complicated mercy was about to begin. His brothers were lost to heaven, but they were not lost to his love, and the humans they sought to help would need that love more than they could possibly imagine. The corruption of mankind. The changes began subtly, like shadows lengthening at sunset. The Watchers had descended with noble intentions, genuine love for humanity, and sincere desires to guide creation toward greater beauty. Yet their gifts came with consequences that none of them had foreseen. Knowledge that had taken heaven eons to develop was suddenly available to humans who had barely learned to work metal and plant grain. Secrets of the stars, properties of healing herbs, techniques of warfare, arts of beauty, all poured into mortal minds like water into vessels too small to contain it safely. At first, the rapid advancement seemed miraculous. Human civilization leaped forward by centuries in mere decades. Cities rose with unprecedented grandeur. Weapons appeared with terrible efficiency. Ornaments and decorations achieved new levels of artistry. The Watchers felt validated in their choice, seeing the obvious benefits their intervention had brought. But wisdom cannot be separated from the experience that creates it. Knowledge without understanding, power without restraint, gifts without the growth needed to use them properly, these became the seeds of corruption rather than elevation. The Watchers themselves began to change in unexpected ways. Their intimate involvement with human affairs awakened aspects of their nature that had never been tested before. They discovered jealousy when humans favored one teacher over another. They felt possessiveness toward the communities they guided. Most troubling of all, they began to desire not just to help humanity, but to be worshipped by it. The unions between Watchers and human women created beings that should never have existed. These children, later called the Nephilim, inherited angelic power without angelic wisdom, celestial strength without celestial restraint. They grew to enormous size and developed appetites that matched their physical proportions. The giants walked the earth like living storms, taking what they wanted without consideration for the smaller beings around them. Their hunger was never satisfied, not for food, not for territory, not for dominance. They consumed entire regions' resources and then moved on, leaving devastation in their wake. Violence spread like wildfire across the earth. The weapons knowledge that Watchers had shared was turned to purposes far beyond their intended use. Humans learned not just how to defend themselves, but how to conquer others. Wars erupted over resources, territory, and the favor of their angelic teachers. The corruption ran deeper than mere physical destruction. Human hearts began to change as they adapted to a world of constant conflict and scarcity. Trust became rare. Kindness was seen as weakness. The strong preyed upon the weak without shame or consequence. Women faced particular suffering as both Watchers and giants sought them for their own purposes. The natural order of human relationships shattered under the weight of beings whose appetites knew no bounds. Families were torn apart, communities destroyed, and entire bloodlines corrupted by forced unions with creatures that should have remained separate. Knowledge itself became corrupted as humans learned truths they were not ready to handle. They discovered how to make weapons of unprecedented lethality, but not how to resolve conflicts peacefully. They learned to adorn themselves with great beauty, but forgot how to see beauty in simple things. They mastered techniques of power, but lost the wisdom to use power justly. The arts that should have elevated human spirits were twisted toward darker purposes. Music became manipulation. Poetry became propaganda. Dance became display of dominance rather than joy. Even the healing arts were corrupted as knowledge of herbs was used to create poisons and knowledge of the body was used to inflict more precise torments. Religious practice suffered perhaps the worst corruption of all. Humans began to worship the Watchers directly, offering sacrifices that grew increasingly elaborate and horrific. The giants demanded tribute that emptied entire regions. Sacred places became sites of violence rather than peace. The earth itself began to groan under the weight of this corruption. The careful balances that maintained natural harmony were disrupted by beings whose very existence violated the original design. Seasons became erratic. Harvests failed. Waters ran foul. The creation that had once sung with unified purpose now screamed in discord. From his watching place in heaven, Remiel witnessed each stage of this deterioration with growing anguish. His compassionate heart felt every cry of pain, every act of violence, every moment of despair that rippled across the earth. The humans he had watched grow and develop with such joy were now suffering in ways that had never existed before. The irony cut deeply into his tender spirit. The Watchers had descended because they loved humanity too much to watch them struggle with their limitations. Yet their intervention had created far greater struggles than any humans had previously known. Their attempt to eliminate suffering had multiplied it beyond measure. Other angels looked to Remiel during this dark time, seeking his perspective on the unfolding tragedy. How could love create such horror? How could good intentions produce such evil results? His answers came slowly, spoken with the weight of one who felt every wound creation had suffered. The corruption was not the fault of love itself, he explained, but of love that had lost its connection to wisdom. The Watchers had loved humanity, but had stopped loving the divine order that made love possible. They had chosen to trust their own judgment over the wisdom that had created them. Yet even in this darkest hour, Remiel's faith in the ultimate triumph of true love never wavered. The corruption was real and terrible, but it was not the end of the story. Justice would come, and after justice, mercy would have its perfect work. The gentle Archangel spent his days now in constant prayer and preparation. The chaos on earth would not be allowed to continue indefinitely. Soon, very soon, heaven would act to restore the broken order. And when that happened, countless souls would need the kind of care that only he could provide. The age of corruption was reaching its climax. The age of judgment was about to begin. And beyond judgment waited the possibility of redemption for all who had not chosen evil beyond recovery. The cry of the earth. The very ground began to speak, though few understood its language. What had once been gentle communication between creation and creator became an urgent plea for help. The earth's voice rose from every wounded place, from forests stripped bare by giant appetites, from rivers running red with violence, from mountains scarred by unnatural mining. This crying of the earth was not metaphor, but reality, perceived by those with spiritual ears to hear. The planet itself had become conscious of its pain in ways that paralleled human awareness of suffering. Creation had been designed as a harmonious whole, and the corruption spreading across its surface sent shockwaves through every connected part. Animals fled from regions where giants walked, driven by instincts that recognized wrongness too profound for mere physical danger. Birds changed their migration patterns to avoid areas thick with spiritual corruption. Even insects seemed to understand that certain places had become toxic to life itself. The natural cycles that had maintained balance for countless ages began to break down under the weight of unnatural intervention. Springs that had never failed went dry. Fertile valleys became barren overnight. Weather patterns shifted in response to the spiritual chaos below, bringing storms where peace should reign and drought where abundance had flourished. Plants and trees seemed to wither not from physical damage, but from exposure to the emotional poison spreading through human communities. Gardens that had bloomed beautifully for generations suddenly refused to grow. Fruit trees bore bitter harvests or none at all. Even hardy weeds struggled to survive in soil saturated with the tears of the innocent. The corruption had reached beyond the merely physical into the spiritual fabric of reality itself. The careful balance between matter and spirit, between order and freedom, between justice and mercy, all had been disrupted by the Watchers' well-intentioned but catastrophic intervention. Human suffering added its voice to the earth's cry, though many of the sufferers did not understand why their pain seemed to echo through the very stones beneath their feet. Mothers wept for children taken by giants. and their tears seemed to sink into the ground and spread like underground rivers of sorrow. Fathers who had lost everything to warfare found their grief matched by the grieving of ancient oaks and patient mountains. The pain of individuals merged with the pain of creation itself, creating a symphony of anguish that rose continuously toward heaven. Heaven heard every note of this terrible music. The divine heart that had rejoiced in creation's early songs now absorbed its cries with infinite compassion and growing determination. Something had to be done. The experiment in allowing rebellion to run its course had produced results too devastating to continue. Remiel felt the earth's crying with particular intensity. His nature as a shepherd of souls made him sensitive to suffering wherever it occurred. But more than that, his role as a bridge between divine mercy and created need positioned him to understand both the earth's pain and heaven's response. The Archangel spent countless hours in communion with the wounded creation, listening to stories that no human ear could hear. He heard the mountains remember when peace reigned in their valleys. He felt the ocean's confusion as they tried to cleanse themselves of spiritual pollution that no physical process could remove. Rivers told him of carrying away more than silt and debris. They bore the dissolved remnants of human hope, the runoff of communities that had given up believing in tomorrow. Forests whispered of roots that could no longer find the spiritual nutrients they needed to grow toward the light. Each cry reached Remiel's heart like a personal plea for help. His compassionate nature expanded to embrace not just human suffering, but the suffering of all creation. He began to understand that his future ministry would need to address wounds that extended far beyond individual souls. The gentle archangel also perceived something else in creation's crying, an undertone of faith that refused to be silenced. Despite all the corruption and pain, the earth maintained its fundamental trust in the goodness of its creator. It cried not in despair, but in hope, believing that help would come. This faith moved Remiel deeply and strengthened his own resolve. If creation itself could maintain hope in such darkness, how much more should heaven's servants trust in the ultimate triumph of love? The earth's crying was not just a plea for rescue, but a prayer for restoration. The intensity of creation's pain served another purpose in divine wisdom. It provided clear evidence that the situation on earth had become untenable. No one could claim that the corruption was mild or temporary when the very ground cried out for relief. The case for intervention had become overwhelming. God listened to these cries with the patience of perfect love and the wisdom of infinite understanding. Every tear, every groan, every whispered plea was received and recorded. The time for justice was approaching, but it would come at exactly the right moment, neither too early nor too late. In the divine councils, the earth's testimony joined with the reports of faithful angels to paint a complete picture of the crisis. The Watchers' rebellion had created consequences that reached into every corner of reality. Their choices had affected not just themselves and their human allies, but all of creation. Remiel participated in these councils as both witness and advocate. His reports carried the weight of one who had felt creation's pain directly, but his recommendations always balanced justice with mercy, seeking solutions that would heal rather than merely punish. The earth's crying was building toward a crescendo that would soon demand response. Creation itself was calling for the restoration of proper order, the return of justice, the healing of ancient wounds. And heaven was preparing to answer with actions that would echo through all eternity. The gentle archangel readied himself for the role he would play in this cosmic restoration. Soon, very soon, his calling as a shepherd of souls would expand to encompass responsibilities he had never imagined. The great heavenly council can earn. The summons came not as a command, but as a gentle drawing of every archangelic heart toward the throne room of the Most High. Michael felt it as a call to arms. Gabriel sensed it as preparation for momentous announcements. Raphael recognized it as the gathering before great healing. Uriel perceived it as the moment when hidden truths would blaze forth. And Remiel understood it as the hour when mercy would be measured against justice in scales that balanced all eternity. The throne room defied description, not because of its grandeur, but because of its perfect simplicity. Here, at the center of all existence, elaborate decoration would have been redundant. The presence of the divine saturated every corner with light so pure it made the brightest stars seem dim. Yet somehow this overwhelming radiance felt gentle rather than harsh, welcoming rather than forbidding. The archangels arranged themselves in their traditional circle, each one representing different aspects of divine nature. Their positions had been established before time began, not by rank or power, but by the unique gifts they brought to the councils of heaven. Together they formed a living mandala of celestial wisdom. The silence that preceded the speaking was not empty, but full, pregnant with possibilities, heavy with the weight of decisions that would reshape reality itself. In this quiet, each archangel prepared their heart for whatever role they would be asked to play in the unfolding drama. When the voice finally spoke, it carried undertones that resonated through every level of creation. The words were clear and simple, but their implications stretched across vast reaches of space and time. The situation on Earth had reached a point where intervention was not just justified, but necessary for the preservation of creation itself. The divine assessment was thorough and heartbreaking. The Watchers' rebellion had created a cascade of corruption that threatened to destroy everything beautiful in human nature. The giants they had fathered consumed resources that rightfully belonged to countless other creatures. The knowledge they had shared inappropriately was being used to multiply suffering rather than reduce it. Yet even in this catalog of devastation, the divine heart revealed no anger or hatred toward the rebels. There was sorrow for their choices, determination to limit their damage, and unwavering commitment to justice. But underneath it all flowed an ocean of love that refused to abandon even those who had abandoned their proper place. Each archangel received their mission with the gravity appropriate to cosmic surgery. Michael would lead the forces that would bind the rebellious Watchers and limit their ability to cause further harm. His strength would be needed to contain beings who had retained much of their celestial power despite their fall. Gabriel would carry messages to the few righteous humans who remained faithful despite the surrounding chaos. His words would warn of coming judgment, while also offering hope for those who chose to align themselves with divine rather than rebellious will. Raphael would begin the long work of healing the spiritual wounds that corruption had inflicted on creation itself. His touch would restore balance to natural systems and provide strength for the recovery that would follow judgment. Uriel would kindle the fires of justice that would burn away the worst corruptions while leaving space for new growth. His light would reveal truth so clearly that no one could claim ignorance of right and wrong. When Remiel's assignment was revealed, the other archangels understood immediately why the gentlest among them had been chosen for perhaps the most difficult task of all. He would oversee the resurrection of the dead and shepherd the souls of those who would perish in the coming judgment. This responsibility carried dimensions that staggered even celestial understanding. The judgment would affect not just the living, but all who had ever lived. Souls that had been waiting in peaceful rest would need to be awakened for final decisions about their eternal destinies. Others who had died in corruption would require careful evaluation of their true intentions and deepest choices. Remiel's nature made him uniquely qualified for this delicate work. His infinite patience would be needed for souls confused by the chaos they had experienced. His profound compassion would help those who had made mistakes understand the mercy available to them. His gentle strength would support those facing difficult truths about their own choices. The assignment also revealed why Remiel had remained in heaven while other angels had descended to earth. His preparation for this role required maintaining perfect connection to divine love and wisdom. Any contamination by earthly corruption would have compromised his ability to serve as an untainted channel of mercy. The archangel accepted his mission with characteristic quietness, though his brothers could sense the weight settling on his spirit. He understood that he would witness more sorrow in the coming age than he had seen in all previous time combined. Every soul he shepherded would carry some burden of pain, confusion, or regret. Yet he also perceived the hope woven through his assignment. The judgment was not an ending, but a beginning. Through the darkness of necessary correction would come the dawn of restored creation. The souls he tended would not remain in sorrow, but would find their way to joy beyond anything they had previously imagined. The council concluded with each archangel fully understanding their role in the vast work ahead. They would act in perfect coordination, their different gifts combining to accomplish what none could achieve alone. Justice and mercy would work together rather than against each other. As they prepared to depart for their various missions, Remiel felt a moment of profound connection with his celestial brothers. They were embarking on tasks that would separate them across vast distances and different kinds of work. Yet they remained united in purpose, bound together by love that transcended space and time. The great work was beginning. Heaven was moving to heal creation's wounds and restore the order that made love possible. And at the heart of it all, a gentle archangel prepared to shepherd countless souls through the darkest valley they would ever know toward the brightest dawn they could ever imagine. The judgment of the Watchers. The reckoning came not with thunder and lightning, but with the quiet authority of absolute justice finally asserting itself. Across the earth, in hidden valleys and mountain strongholds where the fallen Watchers had made their homes, the air itself seemed to thicken with inevitability. The time of consequences had arrived. Michael descended first, his presence announced not by trumpets, but by the sudden stillness that fell over creation when true authority manifests itself. Birds stopped singing. Winds held their breath. Even the giants paused in their endless consuming, sensing that something fundamental had shifted in the balance of power. The Archangel of Strength came not in fury, but in sorrow. These beings he now confronted had once stood beside him in heaven's councils. They had sung together in harmonies that made the music of the spheres. They had shared purposes that stretched across eternity. Now he faced them as rebels who had forfeited their place in the divine order. Raphael moved across the wounded earth like morning light touching frost, beginning the delicate work of healing that would take generations to complete. His touch restored balance to natural systems that had been thrown into chaos by unnatural intervention. Springs began to flow again. Poisoned soil slowly remembered how to nurture life. Gabriel's voice carried across continents, reaching the few scattered communities of humans who had maintained their faith despite the surrounding darkness. His messages were both warning and promise. Judgment was coming, but it would not destroy everything. Those who had remained true to their created purpose would find protection and hope. Uriel kindled flames that burned away spiritual corruption without consuming the physical structures that could still serve good purposes. His fire revealed truth so clearly that even the most self-deceived could no longer hide from their real motivations and choices. Throughout all this divine activity, Remiel maintained his watch from the heavenly realm, preparing for the souls that would soon require his care. His chambers expanded beyond any earthly understanding of space, becoming ready to receive countless spirits who would need shepherding through the transition ahead. The confrontation between Michael and the Watchers played out in dimensions beyond mere physical space. These were beings of immense power, clashing not just with strength, but with the fundamental principles they represented. The fallen angels had chosen personal desire over universal order. Michael embodied the choice to surrender personal will to divine wisdom. Some Watchers fought against their binding with desperate fury, trying to call upon powers they no longer fully possessed. Others accepted their fate with resignation, understanding finally the magnitude of their error. A few even welcomed the intervention, having discovered that their rebellion had brought them misery rather than the joy they had expected. The giants, offspring of unions that should never have occurred, found their unnatural strength failing them when confronted by celestial authority. Their huge frames began to dwindle as the angelic power that had sustained them was withdrawn. Many collapsed, their human heritage unable to support the massive forms their celestial inheritance had created. The process was both swift and eternal, completed in moments yet reverberating through all time. Each fallen Watcher was evaluated not just for their actions, but for the deepest intentions of their hearts. Justice in the divine sense looked beyond surface behaviors to the fundamental choices that had driven those behaviors. Remiel watched these proceedings with profound sadness and an equally profound relief. The suffering on earth would finally begin to end. Yet his brothers, angels he had loved for eons, were being separated from heaven forever. The pain of this loss would remain with him throughout all the ages to come. The sentences varied according to the degree of corruption each watcher had embraced. Some were bound in darkness to await a final judgment still far in the future. Others were assigned to isolated places where their influence could not spread. A few, whose hearts had remained somewhat pure despite their errors, were given opportunities for eventual redemption. The binding itself was accomplished not through physical chains, but through limitations woven into the very fabric of reality. The fallen watchers found themselves unable to travel freely between realms, unable to access their full celestial knowledge, unable to reproduce the kinds of corruption they had spread across the earth. As the judgment unfolded, streams of souls began arriving at the borders of Remiel's expanded domain. These were not just the recently dead, but spirits from across the ages of human existence. All would need to be evaluated, comforted, and guided toward their proper eternal destinations. The variety of souls requiring his care overwhelmed even Remiel's vast compassion. There were innocents who had died as children, their lives cut short by the violence that corruption had unleashed. There were adults who had struggled to maintain goodness despite impossible circumstances. There were others who had been deceived by false teachings, but whose hearts had never fully embraced evil. Most challenging were the souls of those who had collaborated with the fallen watchers while maintaining some vestige of conscience. They had known their choices were wrong, but had been seduced by promises of power or knowledge. Their cases required the most delicate evaluation, weighing their actions against their true intentions and the pressures they had faced. Remiel approached each soul with infinite patience and understanding. He listened to their stories without judgment, helping them see their own choices clearly, while never losing sight of the mercy available to those who genuinely repented. His presence became a refuge where truth could be faced without despair. The judgment of the Watchers marked a turning point in cosmic history. The age of innocence was permanently ended, but the age of informed choice was beginning. Humans would face the future without the false guidance of rebellious angels, free to develop their own relationship with divine truth. From his position overseeing this great transition, Remiel saw both the tragedy and the hope woven together in the divine plan. The corruption had been terrible, but it had also revealed the depth of love that was willing to suffer anything rather than abandon creation to destruction. The gentle Archangel settled in for the long work ahead, knowing that his ministry to wounded souls was just beginning. The judgment was complete, but the healing would take much longer, and he would be there for every moment of it, shepherding each precious spirit toward the light that awaited beyond all darkness. Chains beneath the mountains. Deep beneath the earth where sunlight never reaches and human footsteps never fall, the watchers wait in chains. The mountains above them stretch toward heaven like stone prayers, but no prayers rise from the depths below. Here, in caverns carved by divine justice, the fallen angels begin their long punishment. Remiel descends into this realm of shadows and silence. His presence brings the only light these depths have known since the binding. The chains that hold the watchers gleam like frozen starlight, unbreakable links forged in heaven's foundries and blessed by the Most High's own breath. The condemned angels hang suspended in darkness. Some struggle against their bonds, testing strength that once moved mountains, but now cannot break a single link. Others have already accepted their fate, their wings folded tight against their bodies, their eyes closed in endless meditation. A few whisper prayers to a God they know can hear them, but who will not answer? This becomes Remiel's domain, not by choice, but by divine appointment. Someone must watch the watchers. Someone must ensure the chains hold strong. Someone must bear witness to their suffering and remember why it serves a greater purpose. The caverns stretch endlessly in all directions. Each bound watcher occupies their own space, isolated yet aware of their companion's presence. They cannot speak to each other. They cannot comfort or console. Each faces their punishment alone, as they must. Remiel moves between them like a shepherd checking his flock. His steps echo softly in the vast emptiness. He does not speak to them. What words could bridge the gulf between the faithful and the fallen? Instead, he observes. He remembers. He ensures that justice continues its patient work. Some of the Watchers were once his closest friends. Azazel, who taught humans the art of war. Barakel, who revealed the secrets of the stars. Kokabel, who showed mortals the meaning of constellations. Remiel remembers their laughter in heaven's courts, their eagerness to serve, their bright wings catching eternal light. Now those same wings hang limp and dark. Their eyes, once bright with divine fire, have dimmed to embers. Their voices, which once sang in perfect harmony with the heavenly choir, now speak only in whispers of regret. Yet even in this place of punishment, mercy finds a way to flow. The chains do not torture, they simply hold. The darkness does not torment, it simply conceals. The silence does not drive them mad, it simply forces them to face themselves without distraction. Remiel understands this paradox. Justice and mercy dance together even here, in the deepest places beneath the world. The Watchers suffer, yes, but they also wait. Their punishment has limits, boundaries, an eventual end. On the last day, when all accounts are settled, even they will face the final judgment. Time moves differently in these depths. Minutes stretch into hours, hours into years, years into centuries. The Watchers lose track of seasons, of generations passing above them, of empires rising and falling on the Earth's surface. Only Remiel marks the passage of time, counting moments like a cosmic timekeeper. He observes how each of the fallen copes with their imprisonment. Some rage against their fate, their anger burning like cold fire in the darkness. Others sink into despair so deep it seems to have no bottom. A few find strange peace in their chains, using the endless time to contemplate their choices and their consequences. The mountain roots around them shift and settle with geological patience. Somewhere far above, rivers flow and forests grow, and humans live their brief, bright lives. Down here, nothing changes except the slow erosion of pride and the gradual accumulation of wisdom. Remiel sometimes pauses before Semjaza, the leader of the rebellion. This once mighty angel hangs in chains heavier than the others, marked with symbols that glow with divine authority. Semjaza no longer struggles. His great head hangs forward, his breathing slow and measured. When Remiel approaches, Semjaza's eyes open, and in them burns a light that might be understanding. No words pass between them. What could be said? Semjaza made his choice when he led 200 angels in their descent to Earth. He chose desire over duty, passion over purpose, momentary pleasure over eternal joy. Now he faces the weight of that choice, and with it, the weight of every soul his rebellion affected. Other Watchers whisper occasionally, soft sounds that might be prayers or might be memories. Remiel hears them all. He becomes a living archive of their regrets, their confessions, their slowly dawning wisdom. These fallen angels who once knew everything now learn the hardest lesson of all, the true cost of free will. The chains sing sometimes, a low harmonic that resonates through stone and bone alike. It is not a pleasant sound, but neither is it cruel. It simply is, a constant reminder of consequence, of justice served, of order maintained, even in the depths of chaos. In time, the Watchers' earthly children will perish in the great flood. Their forbidden teachings will fade from human memory, surviving only in fragments and legends. But here, beneath the mountains, their fathers will continue their long wait, guarded by an Archangel who remembers everything and judges nothing. Remiel's vigil has only just begun. The chains will hold for ages yet to come. The darkness will persist until the final trumpet sounds. And through it all, one faithful angel will walk these caverns, keeping watch over the Watchers, ensuring that even the fallen are not forgotten. In the depths beneath the world, justice and mercy hold hands in the dark, and Remiel stands witness to both. Remiel and the abyss, below the chains, below the caverns, below even the roots of mountains, lies something deeper still. The abyss opens like a wound in creation itself, a vast emptiness that existed before the first word was spoken, before light divided from darkness. Here, in this place that is not quite a place, Remiel's true work begins. The abyss does not roar or rage, it simply waits. Its silence is so complete it seems to have weight, pressing down on everything that enters its domain. This is where souls gather, not the living, not quite the dead, but those caught between states, between choices, between hope and despair. Remiel descends deeper than any angel was meant to go. His wings, which once caught heaven's eternal light, now move through darkness so thick it seems solid. Each beat carries him further from the world above, deeper into realms where time moves like honey and space bends according to laws unknown to mortals. The souls he finds here tell stories without words. A woman who died giving birth reaches endlessly toward a child she cannot hold. A soldier who fell in battle still fights wars that ended centuries ago. A philosopher who spent his life seeking truth stares into emptiness, finally understanding that some questions have no answers. These are not the damned. Those have their own destination. These are the uncertain, the confused, the ones who lived good lives but carried burdens they could not release. They drift in the abyss like stars without constellation, each one isolated in their own sphere of memory and regret. Remiel moves among them with infinite patience. He does not judge. That is not his purpose here. He does not comfort with empty words. That would be cruelty in this place where truth matters more than kindness. Instead, he simply presents himself. His presence alone, sometimes enough to remind these lost souls that they are not forgotten. One spirit approaches him, a man whose face shifts like water, showing different ages, different expressions, different possibilities of who he might have been. Angel, the spirit whispers, and his voice echoes strangely in the vast emptiness. Am I dead? Remiel considers the question. In the abyss, simple answers become complex, truth becomes layered. You are between, he finally responds, his voice gentle as morning mist. Death and life are not the only states of being. The spirit nods as if this makes perfect sense. Perhaps it does, here where conventional rules surrender to deeper mysteries. Will I remain here forever? Nothing is forever except God's love, Remiel answers. Even this place serves a purpose. Even waiting has meaning. The spirit drifts away, perhaps comforted, perhaps not. Remiel continues his journey through the endless dark. Each soul he encounters adds another thread to the tapestry of existence he helps weave. Each conversation, no matter how brief, becomes part of the great story still being written. Time moves strangely here. Remiel might spend what feels like hours with a single soul, only to discover that centuries have passed in the world above. Or he might traverse vast distances through the abyss and find that only moments have elapsed in earthly time. The abyss operates by its own calendar, its own clock, its own rhythm. He encounters souls from every age, every culture, every walk of life. An Egyptian priest still clutching prayers to gods whose names are forgotten. A Viking warrior searching for a Valhalla that exists only in his memory. A Native American shaman calling to spirits who no longer answer. All drift together in this space between spaces, equal in their confusion, united in their need. Some souls recognize Remiel for what he is. They see his wings, sense his divine nature, and hope kindles in their ethereal forms. Have you come to lead us home? They ask, their voices blending into a chorus of longing. Remiel's answer is always the same, always honest. I have come to walk with you. The path home each soul must find for themselves. This might seem cruel, but it is not. In the abyss, as in life, the most important journeys cannot be taken by another. Each soul must choose their direction, must decide whether to cling to old pains or release them into the dark. Remiel can witness these choices, can provide his quiet presence as anchor and comfort, but he cannot choose for them. He encounters souls who have been here since before the flood, still wrestling with choices made in the earliest days of human civilization. He meets others who arrived mere moments ago, their earthly lives ended by accident or illness or simple old age. Time makes no difference here. The work of understanding, of acceptance, of release takes as long as it takes. The abyss itself seems alive sometimes, responding to the emotions and choices of the souls within it. When a spirit finally lets go of ancient anger, the darkness around them lightens slightly. When another chooses forgiveness over vengeance, the oppressive silence eases just a little. The place changes with its inhabitants, shaped by their collective journey toward whatever comes next. Remiel observes these transformations with the patience of one who has all eternity. He sees patterns emerge and fade, cycles of struggle and release, waves of understanding that sweep through the gathered souls like tide through water. His presence helps anchor these changes, provides stability in a realm where everything else shifts like dream. Sometimes he encounters souls who have given up entirely, who have sunk so deep into despair they no longer respond to his presence. These challenge him most. How do you reach someone who no longer wishes to be reached? How do you offer hope to someone who has forgotten what hope means? Remiel finds ways. A touch of his wing might stir a memory of sunlight. A whispered word might recall a moment of joy long buried beneath layers of pain. He does not force these awakenings. That would violate the very free will that brought these souls here in the first place. But he offers opportunities, opens doors, plants seeds that might someday grow into something beautiful. The abyss stretches endlessly in all directions, but Remiel has learned to navigate its trackless expanse. He knows where to find the souls who need him most, when to speak and when to remain silent, how to offer his presence as gift rather than burden. This is his art, his calling, his eternal dance with darkness and hope. In the deepest places where even angels fear to tread, Remiel continues his patient work. The abyss may be vast, but his compassion is vaster still. The darkness may be deep, but his light burns deeper. And somewhere in the balance between these forces, souls find their way toward whatever waits beyond the between. Remiel and the Abyss. The Abyss holds secrets older than creation's first dawn. In its endless depths, where darkness has weight and silence speaks louder than screams, Remiel walks paths that exist only when he treads them. This realm belongs to no heaven, serves no hell, simply exists as a gathering place for souls caught between one truth and another. Here, the ordinary rules dissolve like salt in infinite water. Gravity becomes suggestion. Light appears not from any source, but from the presence of understanding. Souls drift through this space like thoughts through a dreaming mind, each carrying their own small world of memory and hope. Remiel encounters a child who died before her 5th birthday, still clutching a wooden toy her father carved by candlelight. She does not weep. Tears cannot exist in this place. Instead, she radiates a quiet confusion, a gentle wondering about where everyone has gone. When she sees Remiel, her face brightens with simple trust. "Are you my guardian angel?" she asks, her voice clear as mountain spring water. "I am a friend," Remiel replies, kneeling to her level. His wings fold around them both, creating a small sanctuary of warmth in the vast cold. "Would you like me to walk with you for a while?" She nods and takes his hand. Her touch feels like morning mist, present but almost not there. Together, they move through currents of other souls, past spirits engaged in their own struggles with understanding and acceptance. The child shows him her toy, a simple horse carved from pine wood, worn smooth by small fingers. "Papa made this for me," she explains. "He said it would carry me anywhere I wanted to go." "Where would you like to go?" Remiel asks. She considers this with the seriousness only children possess. "Home," she finally answers. "But I don't remember where that is anymore." This breaks something in Remiel's eternal heart. Not with pain, angels do not experience pain as humans do, but with a profound recognition of loss. Home becomes a concept rather than a place when death interrupts the journey of growing up. Yet even here, in the space between spaces, home remains possible. He shows her how to listen for the pull of love that never dies, how to feel for the threads that connect all souls across time and distance. Gradually, her eyes widen with recognition. She can sense her father's prayers, her mother's tears, the family dog still waiting by her empty bed. "They miss me," she whispers in wonder. "Love creates bridges, even across the greatest distances," Remiel tells her. "Your wooden horse was right. It can carry you anywhere you want to go, even home." She releases his hand, kisses her toy, and whispers something to it that only she can hear. Then she begins to fade, not into darkness, but into a warm light that seems to come from within her. As she disappears, Remiel hears the faint echo of laughter and running feet, a father's voice calling her name in joy. Not all encounters end with such clear resolution. Remiel finds an old man who sits motionless in the shifting dark, his hands folded, his eyes fixed on something only he can see. When approached, the man does not acknowledge the angel's presence. "I am waiting," the man says, though Remiel has asked no question. "What do you wait for?" "For the answer to reveal itself. I spent my whole life asking the wrong questions. Now I have all of eternity to think of better ones." Remiel settles beside him, matching his stillness. Sometimes the greatest service an angel can provide is simply to wait alongside someone who needs to wait. Time passes. Minutes or centuries, it makes no difference here. The old man's breathing is steady, peaceful, the rhythm of someone who has finally learned patience. Eventually, the man turns to look at Remiel with eyes that hold depths of accumulated wisdom. "You are the one who remembers," he says. "It is not a question." I, I am one who remembers, Remiel agrees. "Then remember this. Every question I failed to ask contained its own answer. Every answer I thought I found was really just another question in disguise. The only truth that matters is the one too simple for words." The old man smiles, and in that smile, Remiel sees the face of every teacher who ever lived, every seeker who ever searched, every student who finally understood that the goal was not to find answers, but to become worthy of receiving them. The man stands, brushes dust from robes that exist only in memory, and walks into a light that appears just for him. These transformations happen constantly throughout the abyss. Souls reach moments of clarity, of release, of understanding, and in those moments they transcend the need to remain between states. They move on to whatever comes next, leaving ripples in the darkness that help guide others toward their own moments of recognition. But for every soul that finds its way forward, others arrive to take their place. The abyss never empties, never fills. It simply serves its eternal purpose as a space for souls to work through complexities of existence, to sort through the tangled threads of their earthly experiences to find peace with choices made and unmade. Remiel moves through this constant flow like a stone in a river, unchanging while everything around him shifts and changes. His presence provides stability, continuity, a fixed point around which lost souls can orient themselves. He does not hurry them or judge their progress. He simply remains available, a patient witness to their struggles and victories. In the deepest parts of the abyss, where even sound cannot penetrate, Remiel sometimes encounters souls so lost they have forgotten they are souls at all. These require the most delicate touch, the gentlest reminder that identity persists beyond the dissolution of flesh. A whispered name can recall an entire lifetime. A fragment of forgotten song can restore a soul's sense of self. The work is endless, but Remiel finds deep satisfaction in its rhythm. Each soul he helps cross from confusion to clarity adds another note to the great symphony of existence. Each moment of understanding brightens the abyss just a little more. Each act of release weakens the hold of despair and strengthens the flow of hope. This is his calling in the space between all other spaces. This is his purpose in the time between all other times. In the abyss where souls learn to let go, Remiel holds on to their stories, their struggles, their moments of breakthrough and transcendence. Someone must remember, someone must witness, someone must walk with the lost until they are found. The flood approaches above the abyss, above the chained watchers. Above even the highest mountains, storm clouds gather with divine purpose. The sky darkens with more than weather. Heaven itself weighs the earth and finds it wanting. The corruption spread by the fallen angels has taken root too deeply. The giants born of forbidden unions have grown too strong. Humanity has learned too much of what it should not know. Remiel senses the change before any earthly creature. In the depths where he walks among waiting souls, the very air grows heavy with approaching judgment. The abyss itself seems to hold its breath. Even the lost spirits pause in their wanderings, sensing something vast moving in the world above. He rises from the deep places, his wings carrying him upward through layers of reality until he breaches the surface of the ordinary world. Here, under the increasingly dark sky, he sees what has become of the earth since the Watchers fell. Cities built by giant hands stretch beyond natural horizons. Weapons forged from heavenly knowledge gleam in armories that never empty. Humans wage war with strategies taught by angels, craft tools with metals pulled from the deep places, practice magic that tears holes in the fabric of creation itself. But it is not the power that troubles heaven most. It is the loss of wonder. Humans have gained knowledge without wisdom, ability without restraint. They build towers to challenge God not from pride, but from boredom. They seek pleasure without purpose, achievement without meaning. The very gift of free will that makes them precious has become a curse they cannot recognize. Remiel walks among them unseen. He observes their daily lives, their dreams, their fears. In some faces, he still sees traces of the divine image they were created to bear. These few pray to a God they can barely remember, practice kindness without understanding why it matters, show mercy because something deep inside them recognizes mercy as sacred. But they are outnumbered. For every person who retains some connection to their created purpose, 10 others have forgotten they were ever meant for anything beyond survival and satisfaction. The knowledge given by the Watchers has made them powerful but not wise, clever but not good. A young woman sits by a well at evening, drawing water as women have done since the first cities rose. She does not know that the Archangel Remiel watches her, but something in her movements speaks of grace retained, of dignity preserved even in a world gone mad. She hums as she works, a wordless tune that sounds almost like the songs once sung in heaven's courts. When she finishes her task, she does not immediately return home. Instead, she shares her water with an old man too weak to draw his own. She asks no payment, expects no gratitude. She simply sees need and responds. In her simple act of kindness, Remiel glimpses what humanity was meant to become. But she is exceptional. Around her, the city pulses with casual cruelty and thoughtless indulgence. Markets sell not just goods, but people. Temples host rituals that mock the sacred. Children learn to fight before they learn to read, to take before they learn to give. The corruption runs deeper than behavior. It has infected the very ground, the water, the air itself. Plants grow twisted in fields watered with blood. Animals flee from humans who have forgotten their role as caretakers. Even the earth beneath their feet groans under the weight of so much accumulated wrongness. Remiel understands why the flood must come. This is not divine anger seeking revenge. This is divine love performing surgery. The cancer must be cut out before it spreads beyond all hope of healing. The infection must be cleansed before it kills the patient entirely. Yet understanding does not make the necessity less painful. Each soul that will perish in the coming waters carries some spark of divine origin. Each life that will end holds possibilities that will never be explored. The flood will be merciful in its swiftness, but mercy does not make it less tragic. In his wanderings, Remiel encounters Noah, the one man chosen to carry humanity forward beyond the coming catastrophe. Noah does not see the angel, but he feels the weight of approaching change. His prayers have grown urgent, desperate. He knows something terrible is coming, but cannot yet comprehend its scope. Noah still retains what most humans have lost, the ability to hear God's voice. When the divine command comes to build the ark, he does not question or delay. He simply begins. His neighbors mock him, call him mad for building a boat far from any sea. They do not understand that the sea is coming to them. Remiel watches Noah work, day after day, year after year. The righteous man's hands blister and heal, blister and heal. His back bends under the weight of massive timbers. His family sometimes doubts his sanity, but Noah persists because he remembers what it means to trust in something greater than human understanding. The animals begin to gather months before the first drop falls. They come not by instinct, but by the same divine calling that guides Noah's work. Pairs of creatures that have never met walk side by side toward the growing ark. Predators and prey travel together in impossible peace. Even the great beasts, the last children of the Watcher's corruption, sense the approaching end and seek shelter they will not find. As the final days approach, the sky grows darker still. Lightning flickers constantly on the horizon, but no thunder follows. The air itself seems to thicken, pressing down on every living thing with the weight of accumulated consequence. Rivers run backward. Birds refuse to sing. Even insects fall silent. Remiel stands on a hilltop overlooking the valley where humanity has built its grandest city. Tomorrow the rains will begin. In 40 days, everything he sees will lie beneath crushing depths of divine judgment. The towers will topple. The temples will crumble. The great libraries will become tombs for knowledge that was never meant to be possessed. He does not weep. Angels do not weep as humans do. But something in his eternal heart grows heavy with the sorrow of necessary endings. So much will be lost. So much potential will drown beneath the cleansing waters. Yet this is the only way forward, the only path that leads to hope instead of eternal darkness. The wind picks up, carrying with it the scent of distant rain. Somewhere below, Noah seals the last opening in the ark's hull. The chosen animals settle into their shelters. The righteous family prepares for a journey they cannot yet imagine. And high above it all, watching from the place where earth meets heaven, Remiel keeps his vigil. He will witness every drop that falls, remember every life that ends, honor every soul that passes from this world to whatever comes next. Someone must bear witness. Someone must remember. Someone must carry the weight of this moment forward into the new world that will rise from the floodwaters. The age of the giants is ending. The age of the flood begins tonight. After the waters recede, silence blankets the earth like fresh snow. Where once great cities sprawled across valleys and plains, now only gentle hills mark where the highest towers reach toward heaven. The waters have pulled back into their appointed places, leaving behind a world washed clean, emptied, ready to begin again. Remiel walks across this renewed landscape, his feet touching soil that has never known the tread of human ambition or angelic corruption. Everything feels different. The very air tastes cleaner, purged of the accumulated weight of ages spent in darkness. Even the sunlight seems brighter, as if the flood has washed the sky itself. The ark rests on a mountain peak, its massive hull catching the first rays of morning sun. Inside, Noah and his family prepare for their emergence into a world transformed. They have been voyagers for longer than many humans live entire lives, passengers on an ocean that covered the whole earth. Now they must become pioneers in a land that is both utterly familiar and completely strange. Noah opens the ark's great door and steps onto solid ground for the first time in over a year. He kneels immediately, his hands grasping handfuls of wet earth, his face lifted toward heaven in wordless thanksgiving. His wife and sons gather around him, their eyes wide with wonder at the vast emptiness spread before them. Animals emerge in careful order, just as they entered. The great cats stretch in morning sunlight, their fur damp with spray from the retreating waters. Birds take flight with cries of joy, their wings carrying them across valleys that echo with new possibility. Cattle and sheep spread across hillsides where grass is already beginning to grow with supernatural speed. Remiel observes their first tentative steps into this fresh world. The flood has done more than cleanse away corruption. It has reset the fundamental relationships between all living things. Predator and prey no longer eye each other with instinctive wariness. Instead, they share the wonder of new beginning, the recognition that they have all participated in something miraculous. Noah builds his first altar from stones that have never been shaped by human hands. The fire he kindles burns with unusual brightness, and the smoke rises straight toward heaven without wind to bend its path. His offering is simple: grain saved from the ark's stores, wine pressed from grapes that grew in the world before the flood. Yet the sacrifice carries the weight of all human gratitude, all recognition of divine mercy. God's voice comes like gentle thunder, promising that flood will never again destroy the earth. A rainbow appears in the western sky, its colors more vivid than any that graced the previous world. It stands as a sign, a covenant, a bridge between the divine and human realms that speaks of hope rather than judgment. But Remiel knows that this new beginning, beautiful as it appears, carries its own challenges. The human heart remains unchanged. Noah and his descendants still possess the same free will that led their ancestors into corruption. The potential for both greatness and catastrophe lies dormant in every choice they will make. Already he can see the seeds of future struggles. Noah plants a vineyard and discovers wine's power to numb pain and cloud judgment. His sons begin to compete for their father's blessing, each seeking advantage over the others. The animals, initially peaceful, gradually return to their natural patterns of hunting and hiding. The cleansing was complete, but the work of building something better has only begun. This world offers fresh possibilities, but it cannot guarantee fresh choices. Each generation will face the same fundamental questions that confronted their predecessors. Will they remember their Creator? Will they treat each other with dignity? Will they use their gifts to build up rather than tear down? Remiel's role in this new world shifts subtly. During the time of the Watchers and their corruption, he served primarily as observer and guardian of the condemned. Now he becomes something different, a keeper of memory who helps ensure that hard-won lessons are not forgotten. He watches Noah teach his sons the arts of agriculture and animal husbandry. These skills, preserved through the catastrophe, now become the foundation for human civilization's second chance. But alongside practical knowledge, Noah passes down stories, accounts of the world that was, warnings about the consequences of forgetting divine law, testimonies to God's mercy, even in judgment. The new world spreads out like a blank canvas, waiting for the first brushstrokes of human creativity. Rivers run clear and cold, from mountain peaks to ocean shores. Forests grow with primeval thickness, their canopies alive with birds whose songs have no memory of fear. Plains stretch endlessly under skies, unmarked by the smoke of warfare or industry. Yet Remiel sees beyond this initial beauty to the cities that will rise, the kingdoms that will flourish and fall, the endless cycle of human achievement and failure that will mark the centuries to come. The flood has provided a new beginning, but not a different ending. Humanity will again face choices that test their wisdom and their will. Some changes, however, run deeper than human nature. The direct connection between earth and heaven, broken when the Watchers fell, remains severed. Angels no longer walk openly among humans as they once did. Divine revelation comes through dreams and visions rather than face-to-face encounters. The age of direct angelic intervention has passed, replaced by something more subtle, more demanding of human faith. This separation creates both challenge and opportunity. Humans must now choose their path without constant divine guidance, but this also means their choices carry greater weight, greater meaning. Faith becomes more precious when it must be maintained without constant proof. Goodness becomes more valuable when it flows from internal conviction rather than external compulsion. Remiel understands his place in this new arrangement. He will not appear to humans as he once might have. Instead, he works through whispers of conscience, through dreams that fade upon waking but leave their truth behind, through the subtle pull of hope that draws souls toward light even in darkness. The rainbow fades from the western sky, but its promise remains written in the very fabric of creation. The earth will not again be destroyed by flood, but this does not mean it will not again require cleansing. Future generations will face their own reckonings, their own moments of choice between the easy path and the right path. As the sun sets on this first day of the new world, Remiel takes his place as guardian of memory and keeper of hope. The flood has ended, but the story continues. Humanity has been given another chance to fulfill their original purpose, to be stewards of creation, bearers of divine image, bridges between the earthly and eternal realms. The work begins again, patient and eternal as the turning of the seasons. The Angel of Hope. In the years that follow the Great Flood, as human civilization slowly rebuilds itself from scattered families into tribes and nations, whispers begin to circulate about an angel who walks unseen among the grieving. They call him by many names: the Comforter, the Memory Keeper, the One who waits. But most often, when hope seems lost and darkness presses too close, they speak of him simply as the Angel of Hope. Remiel has not changed his nature, but the world's transformation has revealed aspects of his purpose that remained hidden during the age of direct divine intervention. Where once he served primarily as observer and guardian of the condemned, now he becomes something more active, more present in the daily struggles of human existence. A widow sits by her husband's grave, her children hungry, her future uncertain. She does not see the figure who stands beside her in the gathering dusk, but she feels something shift in the air around her grief. The crushing weight of despair lifts just enough for her to remember her own strength, her own capacity to endure. When she rises to return home, she carries with her a quiet certainty that tomorrow will bring possibilities she cannot yet imagine. Remiel's presence works like sunlight through clouds, indirect, gentle, but unmistakably real. He does not solve problems or provide easy answers. Instead, he reminds people of resources they have forgotten they possess. He whispers of connections that transcend immediate circumstances. He plants seeds of possibility in soil that seem too barren to support new growth. The early church fathers, those wise men who seek to understand the mysteries of faith, write of Remiel with particular reverence. They see in him a bridge between the justice of God and the mercy of God, a figure who embodies the truth that divine love never abandons its children, even in their darkest hours. St. John Chrysostom speaks of him as the angel who remembers what we have forgotten, that every ending contains the possibility of beginning, every death the seed of resurrection. Augustine writes of dreams in which a figure with quiet eyes and folded wings sits beside those who mourn, not speaking but somehow communicating that their loved ones are not lost, merely waiting in a place beyond the reach of time. These early theologians struggle to place Remiel within the conventional hierarchies of angelic beings. He does not fit neatly into the categories established by earlier scholars. He is not a warrior like Michael, not a messenger like Gabriel, not a healer like Raphael. His power lies in something more subtle, the ability to sustain hope when all reason for hope has fled. Jerome, translating ancient texts in his monastery cell, encounters references to Remiel that seem to contradict each other. In some passages, he appears as a judge of the dead, in others, as their comforter. Jerome gradually comes to understand that these roles are not contradictory, but complementary. Remiel judges with the kind of justice that leads to mercy, comforts with the kind of mercy that does not ignore truth. The Desert Fathers, those holy hermits who seek God in the wilderness, report encounters with a figure they believe to be Remiel. He appears to them in moments of deepest spiritual crisis, when their faith wavers and their resolve weakens. He does not offer easy consolation or quick solutions. Instead, he simply remains present, his quiet strength helping them remember why they began their journey toward God. One desert father, Abba Macarius, writes of a night when despair nearly drove him to abandon his hermitage and return to the world. As he packed his few possessions, preparing to leave, he became aware of someone sitting in the corner of his cell. The figure said nothing, but his presence filled the small space with such peace that Macarius found himself unpacking, settling back into his routine of prayer and contemplation. I never saw his face clearly, Macarius writes, but I felt known by him in a way that transcended sight. He reminded me without words that my struggle was not unique, that others had walked this path before me, that the darkness I faced was not permanent but temporary, a passage rather than a destination. Common people begin to recognize Remiel's influence in their lives. A farmer whose crops fail finds himself visited by dreams of rain and harvest. A merchant ruined by thieves discovers unexpected opportunities for honest work. A mother grieving her lost child feels, in the depth of her sorrow, a presence that assures her that love persists beyond death. These encounters share certain characteristics. Remiel never appears in moments of triumph or celebration. He comes instead to those who have reached the end of their own resources, who face circumstances that seem impossible to overcome. He does not change their circumstances, but transforms their capacity to endure them. His comfort differs from human consolation in important ways. Where humans might offer false reassurance or empty promises, Remiel provides something more valuable: the deep knowledge that suffering has meaning, that struggle serves a purpose, that even in the darkest night, dawn remains inevitable. A young monk, Thomas of Celano, writes of Remiel as the angel who understands that hope is not the absence of sorrow, but the presence of something stronger than sorrow. He does not take away our pain, but shows us how to carry it in ways that make us more rather than less human. The common people begin to invoke Remiel's name in their prayers, not seeking miracles, but asking for the strength to endure. They pray to him during famines, plagues, and wars, not for deliverance from these trials, but for the grace to maintain their humanity in the face of dehumanizing circumstances. Gradually, Remiel's reputation spreads beyond theological circles and monastic communities. He becomes known as the patron of the grieving, the protector of the hopeless, the guardian of those who have lost their way. His symbol, often depicted as a closed eye surrounded by gentle light, appears carved in stone above doorways where the dying are tended, painted on walls where orphans are sheltered, woven into banners carried by those who work among the poor. Yet Remiel himself remains elusive, more felt than seen, more experienced than understood. He continues his ancient work of walking among souls in transition, but now that work extends beyond the boundaries between life and death, to include the smaller transitions that mark human existence, the movement from despair to hope, from isolation to connection, from meaninglessness to purpose. In all of this, Remiel remains what he has always been: a faithful servant of divine love, a keeper of memory, a guardian of hope. The world may change around him, civilizations may rise and fall, but his essential nature endures. He is the angel who remembers what others forget, who sees what others miss, who waits with infinite patience for every soul to find its way home. Remiel in later texts. As centuries pass and sacred writings multiply, Remiel's name appears in texts that circle the edges of accepted scripture. These later works, born from the dreams and visions of mystics and prophets, reveal new dimensions of his character while confirming the ancient truth of his compassionate nature. In the apocalyptic visions of Second Esdras, Remiel emerges as Jeremiel, the angel appointed to watch over the resurrection of the dead. Here, his role expands beyond guardian and comforter to include the awesome responsibility of awakening souls at the end of time. The text describes him as the angel who stirs the hearts of the faithful departed, calling them back to life with a voice that penetrates even the deepest sleep of death. Ezra the prophet, in his mystical encounter with this angel, describes a being of extraordinary gentleness despite his tremendous power. Jeremiel's wings span the distance between earth and heaven, yet his touch is lighter than morning dew. His voice carries the authority of divine command, yet it speaks with the tenderness of a mother calling her children home. Tell me, O Lord's angel, Ezra pleads in his vision, what will become of those who have died before the final day? And Jeremiel responds not with theological complexity, but with simple assurance. They rest in their chambers like sleepers in peaceful beds, guarded by angels who remember their names and count their tears as precious jewels. The Book of Baruch, another late text, presents Remiel as the angel who opens the books of human deeds at the final judgment. But his role is not that of a prosecuting attorney seeking condemnation. Instead, he reads each life with the care of a scholar, treasuring an illuminated manuscript, finding in every story threads of grace that others might miss. In this vision, Baruch sees Remiel standing before the throne of God, great volumes spread before him that contain the records of human existence. But as he reads, his finger traces not the sins and failures, but the moments of kindness, the struggles toward goodness, the small victories of conscience over convenience. See how this one shared bread when she herself was hungry, Remiel says, his voice carrying across the cosmic courtroom. Observe how this man forgave his enemy when forgiveness seemed impossible. Notice how this child chose truth when lies would have been easier. The Ethiopian Book of Enoch, composed centuries after the original Enoch literature, expands on Remiel's role among the archangels. Here he is called Raguel, the friend of God, tasked with ensuring that angelic beings themselves remain faithful to their divine purpose. His authority extends even to other angels, making him a kind of celestial guardian of integrity. This text reveals a Remiel who watches not only over human souls, but over the entire cosmic order. When angels stray from their appointed paths, he is the one who calls them back to remembrance of their true nature. When celestial beings become proud or complacent, he reminds them of their role as servants rather than masters. The Slavonic Enoch presents yet another facet of Remiel's character. In this work, he appears as the angel who escorts righteous souls through the various levels of heaven, explaining the mysteries they encounter along the way. His guidance is patient and thorough, never hurrying souls beyond their capacity to understand. Each soul must walk its own path to comprehension. Remiel explains to the prophet in this vision. Some climb quickly, their hearts already prepared for divine truth. Others must rest at each level, allowing their spirits to adjust to increasing light. My task is to ensure that none are left behind, that each arrives at their proper destination in their proper time. These later texts often struggle with the spelling and exact nature of Remiel's name. Some call him Jeremiel, others Raguel, still others Remiel. The variations reflect not confusion, but recognition that his essential nature transcends the limitations of human language. Like light passing through a prism, his identity takes on different colors depending on the perspective of those who encounter him. Medieval scribes, copying these texts by candlelight in monastery scriptoriums, sometimes add their own marginal notes about Remiel. This is the angel who came to Brother Benedict in his final illness, writes one monk. He spoke no words, but his presence filled the cell with such peace that death became a gentle sleep rather than a violent departure. Islamic traditions, too, preserve memories of an angel who might be Remiel, though they call him by other names. In these accounts, he appears as one of the bearers of the divine throne, a figure of such stillness and contemplation that he seems carved from light itself. His eyes are always closed, say these texts, because he is forever absorbed in the vision of God's face. The Gnostic texts, those mystical writings that explore the hidden dimensions of spiritual reality, present Remiel as a revealer of secrets, not the forbidden knowledge that led to the Watcher's downfall, but the sacred wisdom that helps souls remember their divine origin. In these works, he appears to seekers who have purified their hearts through spiritual discipline. I am the one who helps you remember what you knew before birth, Remiel says in one Gnostic dialogue. I do not teach new things, but unveil the ancient truths that sleep within your spirit. Every soul carries the memory of its celestial home. My task is to help that memory awaken. The Testament of Solomon, a late magical text, assigns to Remiel the power to bind demons and protect the innocent from spiritual attack. But even in this context, his methods differ from those of warrior angels like Michael. Where Michael conquers through strength, Remiel overcomes evil through persistence and patient love. The greatest demons, this text suggests, are not the ones who rage and threaten, but the ones who whisper that hope is foolish, that love is weakness, that goodness is unrewarded. Against these subtle enemies, Remiel stands as a living contradiction, proving through his very existence that hope is reasonable, love is strength, and goodness is its own reward. Throughout all these varied texts, certain themes remain constant. Remiel appears as a figure of transition, helping souls move from one state of being to another. He serves as a bridge between the divine and human realms, translating heavenly truth into forms that earthly minds can grasp. Most importantly, he embodies the principle that no soul is beyond the reach of divine mercy, no situation beyond the possibility of redemption. These later writings may not carry the authority of ancient scripture, but they preserve something equally valuable: the human recognition that in the darkest moments of existence, when hope seems extinct and meaning appears absent, something greater than ourselves continues to watch, to wait, and to work for our ultimate good. In the margins of history, in the whispers of mystics, in the dreams of those who dare to believe in angels, Remiel's story continues to unfold. Early Christian interpretations. The first Christian theologians faced a delicate task when they encountered references to Remiel in the ancient texts. How should they understand this quiet angel who seemed to operate in the shadows of more prominent figures like Michael and Gabriel? How could they reconcile his role as judge of the dead with his reputation as a source of comfort for the living? Clement of Alexandria, writing in the 2nd century, offers one of the earliest Christian meditations on Remiel's nature. He sees in this angel a perfect example of how divine justice and mercy work together rather than in opposition. Just as a wise physician must sometimes cause pain in order to heal, Clement writes, so Remiel judges not to condemn but to cleanse, not to punish but to purify. Clement's interpretation proves influential among early Christian writers. They begin to see Remiel as embodying the kind of judgment that leads to restoration rather than destruction. His role in overseeing the dead becomes not about determining eternal punishment, but about helping souls understand their earthly lives in the light of divine truth. Origen, the great theologian of the 3rd century, takes this interpretation even further. In his controversial work on universal salvation, he suggests that Remiel represents God's refusal to abandon any created soul. Even in the deepest darkness, Origen writes, this angel maintains vigil. Even in the most hopeless circumstances, he plants seeds of possibility. His very existence proclaims that love is stronger than death, that hope is more persistent than despair. These early interpretations sometimes bring their authors into conflict with church authorities. The idea that judgment might ultimately lead to restoration rather than eternal punishment troubles bishops who prefer more definitive doctrines. Yet the image of Remiel as a compassionate figure proves too compelling to suppress entirely. John Chrysostom, preaching in Constantinople, speaks of Remiel in more personal terms. He describes him as the angel who comes to believers in moments of deep spiritual crisis, not to offer easy answers, but to provide the strength needed to endure questions that have no simple solutions. There are times, Chrysostom tells his congregation, when faith feels like foolishness, when prayer seems to echo in empty space, when the very foundations of our belief shake beneath us. In these moments, do not be surprised if you sense a presence that offers no explanations, but somehow makes explanation unnecessary. This may be the angel Remiel, reminding you that doubt is not the opposite of faith, but often its deepest expression. Jerome, working on his translation of the Bible into Latin, struggles with the textual problems surrounding Remiel. The angel's name appears in some manuscripts, but not others. Some versions call him Jeremiel, others Raguel. Jerome ultimately decides to include references to Remiel in his notes and commentaries rather than in the biblical text itself. The truth of this angel, Jerome writes, lies not in the certainty of his name, but in the consistency of his character. Whether called Remiel or Jeremiel or any other name, he represents the aspect of divine nature that never gives up on any soul, never writes off any life as beyond redemption. Augustine, perhaps the most influential of the early Christian theologians, initially approaches Remiel with some suspicion. Augustine's emphasis on divine sovereignty and human depravity leaves little room for angels who seem to offer comfort without demanding repentance. Yet even Augustine comes to appreciate the subtle wisdom of Remiel's approach. In his later writings, Augustine describes a dream in which he encountered a figure he believed to be Remiel. The angel said nothing, but his presence communicated a profound truth: that divine love operates not only through dramatic interventions, but through patient presence, not only through miraculous healings, but through the quiet grace that enables ordinary people to bear extraordinary burdens. I understood, Augustine writes, that this angel represents the most difficult aspect of divine love to comprehend. Not the love that rescues us from our circumstances, but the love that enables us to transform our circumstances through faithful endurance. The Cappadocian Fathers, Basil, Gregory of Nazianzus, and Gregory of Nyssa, develop a more systematic understanding of Remiel's role in Christian theology. They see him as representing the already but not yet nature of Christian hope. He embodies the truth that salvation is both a present reality and a future promise. Gregory of Nyssa, in particular, writes beautifully about Remiel's role in the process of spiritual growth. This angel, he suggests, understands that the journey toward God is not a single leap, but a series of small steps, not a dramatic transformation, but a gradual unveiling of what we were always meant to become. The Desert Fathers, those early Christian hermits who sought God in the wilderness, claim numerous encounters with Remiel. Their accounts, preserved in the sayings of the Desert Fathers, describe him as an angel who specializes in helping people find God in the midst of emptiness rather than in the midst of abundance. Abba Anthony, the father of Christian monasticism, speaks of Remiel as the angel of the desert experience. Not the desert as a place of punishment, but the desert as a place of purification, where the soul learns to find water in dry places and to see stars invisible in the daylight of ordinary life. These early Christian interpretations of Remiel share several common themes. They see him as an angel of process rather than event, of gradual transformation rather than sudden change. They understand him as a figure who works primarily through presence rather than action, through being rather than doing. Most importantly, they recognize in Remiel a reflection of the Christian understanding of divine love, not as a force that demands perfection, but as a presence that makes perfection possible, not as a power that solves all problems, but as a strength that enables us to live meaningfully in the midst of unsolved mysteries. The early church's interpretation of Remiel proves remarkably durable. Even as theological fashions change and doctrinal emphases shift, the basic understanding of him as an angel of hope and patience remains constant. He becomes a symbol of the Christian conviction that no soul is beyond the reach of divine mercy, no situation beyond the possibility of redemption. In the writings of these early theologians, Remiel emerges not as a figure from distant mythology, but as a present reality, an angel whose ministry continues in every age, in every place where human beings struggle with the basic questions of existence. Why do we suffer? What is the meaning of death? How can we maintain hope when hope seems unreasonable? Their answer, embodied in their understanding of Remiel, is both simple and profound. We are not alone. Someone watches. Someone waits. Someone remembers. And that someone never gives up on us, no matter how thoroughly we might give up on ourselves. Medieval angelology. The great universities of medieval Europe become laboratories for understanding the celestial realm. Scholars armed with Aristotelian logic and Christian revelation attempt to map the invisible world with the same precision their colleagues use to chart the movements of stars. In this systematic exploration of angelic nature, Remiel occupies a unique and sometimes puzzling position. Thomas Aquinas, the master theologian of the 13th century, encounters the question of Remiel while constructing his comprehensive theology of angels. Thomas approaches the problem with characteristic precision, seeking to understand exactly where this quiet archangel fits within the established hierarchies of celestial beings. The pseudo-Dionysian system, inherited from earlier centuries, organizes angels into 9 orders arranged in 3 hierarchies. At the top stand the seraphim, cherubim, and thrones. Being so close to God, they burn with pure love. In the middle rank are dominions, virtues, and powers, angels who govern the cosmic order. At the bottom are principalities, archangels, and angels, those who interact most directly with human affairs. But where does Remiel belong in this careful classification? His functions seem to cut across traditional boundaries. He exercises authority over other angels, suggesting a high rank. Yet he works intimately with human souls, implying a lower position. He judges, but with mercy. He comforts, but with truth. Thomas ultimately places Remiel among the archangels, but with important qualifications. This blessed spirit, Thomas writes, seems to partake of the nature of multiple orders. Like the thrones, he contemplates divine justice. Like the virtues, he works miracles of hope in desperate circumstances. Like the archangels, properly speaking, he serves as messenger between heaven and earth. Perhaps his nature is intended to remind us that angelic hierarchies, while real, are not rigid boundaries but flowing expressions of divine love. Albertus Magnus, Thomas's teacher, takes a different approach. He suggests that Remiel represents a unique category of angel, one whose primary function is to bridge different realms of existence. Most angels specialize in particular aspects of divine service, Albert writes, but some few are appointed to work in the spaces between, to serve as living connections between what appears separate. Remiel is such a bridge angel, linking life and death, justice and mercy, despair and hope. The medieval scholars also grapple with the textual problems surrounding Remiel's identity. The proliferation of manuscripts, many containing variant readings and scribal errors, creates confusion about the angel's exact name and function. Some texts call him Jeremiel, others Raguel, still others Ramiel. Each variant seems to emphasize different aspects of his ministry. Bonaventure, the Franciscan theologian, proposes an elegant solution to this problem. He suggests that the various names represent not confusion, but richness, different human attempts to capture aspects of an angelic nature too complex for any single designation. Names have power, Bonaventure explains, but some realities transcend the power of names to contain them. When we call this angel Remiel, we emphasize his role as God's compassion. When we call him Jeremiel, we highlight his function in raising the dead. When we say Raguel, we focus on his friendship with the divine. All these names are true, but none is complete. The angel himself remains greater than our ability to name him. The medieval period also sees the development of more popular devotions to Remiel. While learned theologians debate his exact position in celestial hierarchies, ordinary Christians begin to pray to him in times of grief and loss. Churches dedicated to Saint Michael or Saint Gabriel sometimes include side altars honoring Remiel, often decorated with symbols of comfort and hope. Medieval artists struggled to depict Remiel visually. Unlike Michael with his sword or Gabriel with his lily, Remiel's primary attributes are internal rather than external. How do you paint patience? How do you sculpt hope? Some artists show him with closed eyes, emphasizing his contemplative nature. Others give him wings that curve protectively around smaller figures, suggesting his role as guardian of the vulnerable. The most successful medieval depictions of Remiel show him in moments of transition. A beautiful fresco in the Abbey of Saint-Denis shows him standing at the threshold between 2 rooms, one dark, one light. His hand extended toward figures moving from shadow into illumination. His face is serene but not distant, compassionate but not weak. The mystery plays of the late medieval period sometimes include Remiel as a character. In these dramatic presentations of biblical stories, he appears not in the main action, but in interludes, speaking directly to the audience about the meaning of what they have witnessed. His speeches are gentle reflections on suffering and hope, reminders that divine love operates even when it cannot be seen. One particularly moving mystery play, performed annually in the town of Wakefield, includes a scene where Remiel addresses the souls of the faithful departed. The actor playing the angel speaks these words: "You who sleep in hope, be not troubled by the length of your waiting." Time moves differently in the realm where love is perfect. What seems like eternity to those who mourn is but a moment to those who rest in God's embrace. The medieval period also produces the first systematic prayers specifically addressed to Remiel. These prayers, found in various books of hours and personal devotionals, reflect a deep understanding of his particular ministry. They do not ask for miraculous interventions or dramatic rescues. Instead, they seek the quiet graces that make endurance possible. A typical prayer from this period reads, "Blessed Remiel, angel of patient love, be with us in our times of waiting. When hope grows dim and faith wavers, remind us that the dawn always follows the darkest hour. Help us to trust in God's timing, even when we cannot understand God's purposes. Grant us the grace to comfort others as you have comforted us." The scholastic theologians of the later medieval period attempt to understand the exact nature of Remiel's knowledge and power. Does he know the future? Can he read human thoughts? What are the limits of his authority? These questions reflect the medieval love of precision and systematic understanding. Duns Scotus, the Franciscan philosopher, suggests that Remiel's unique gift is not omniscience but perfect memory. This angel, Scotus proposes, remembers not only what has been but what was meant to be. He sees the divine intention behind every created thing, including the divine intention for every human soul. This is why his presence brings hope. He reminds us of who we were meant to become. William of Ockham, famous for his philosophical razor, takes a simpler approach. He argues that too much speculation about angelic nature distracts from angelic function. The important question, Ockham writes, is not how Remiel knows what he knows, but how his knowledge serves divine love. The angel's mystery should inspire worship, not merely curiosity. The medieval synthesis of reason and faith finds in Remiel a perfect example of how intellectual understanding and spiritual experience can complement each other. The scholars provide frameworks for understanding his role, while the mystics and ordinary believers provide testimony to his activity. Together, they create a rich portrait of an angel who works not through dramatic displays of power, but through the quiet persistence of love. As the medieval period draws to a close, Remiel has become firmly established in Christian consciousness as the angel of hope, deferred but not denied, of justice tempered by mercy, of truth communicated through presence rather than words. He represents the medieval insight that the most profound spiritual realities often work in the most subtle ways. Silent guardian of the dead. In the quiet spaces between life and resurrection, where time moves differently and hope takes root in darkness, Remiel keeps his eternal watch. This is not the dramatic battlefield where Michael wages war against evil, nor the bright throne room where Gabriel delivers divine proclamations. This is the waiting place, where souls rest in peace or wrestle with memories, where the dead dream of tomorrow. The realm Remiel oversees exists beyond human understanding of geography. It is not a place in the way mortals think of places, with borders and landscapes and physical structures. Instead, it resembles a vast sanctuary built from compassion itself, where each soul finds exactly the environment needed for their particular journey toward understanding. Some traditions call this realm Sheol, others name it the place of the fathers, but these words barely capture its true nature. It is less a destination than a pause, less a prison than a garden, where wounded spirits can heal at their own pace. Here, the rush and pressure of earthly existence gives way to the patient rhythm of eternity. Remiel moves through this domain not as a ruler, but as a caretaker, tending souls the way a devoted gardener tends precious plants. He knows each spirit in his care by name, understands their particular struggles, recognizes their unique beauty, even when they cannot see it themselves. His presence brings comfort without forcing change, offers hope without demanding immediate response. The newly arrived often come to him confused and frightened, still clinging to the familiar patterns of mortal thinking. They expect judgment to fall like a sword, swift and final. Instead, they find themselves in a place of surprising gentleness where their deepest fears are met with infinite patience and their worst failures are seen through eyes of understanding love. A mother who lost her child to the giant's violence arrives carrying guilt that she could not provide protection. Remiel sits with her in silence that speaks louder than any words, letting her feel his certainty that love is never wasted, that her fierce devotion to her child blessed both their lives immeasurably. A man who compromised his integrity to survive the chaos of the corrupted world comes weighted down with shame that threatens to crush his spirit. The Archangel helps him see that surviving was not cowardice, but hope, that choosing life, even imperfectly, kept alive the possibility of choosing better when circumstances allowed. Children who died too young need different comfort entirely. They have not lived long enough to accumulate heavy burdens of guilt or regret. Instead, they often grieve for the experiences they will never have, the growth they will never complete. Remiel shows them that nothing truly precious is ever lost, that the love they knew continues to grow even after death. The waiting place holds souls from every era of human existence, creating a tapestry of experience that spans from the earliest days of creation to the present moment. Ancient patriarchs rest near victims of recent violence. Wise women who lived in times of peace share space with warriors who knew only conflict. Yet there is no confusion or conflict in this mingling of times and cultures. The artificial divisions that separated people in life, tribe from tribe, rich from poor, learned from simple, dissolve in the light of deeper truths. Here, only the heart matters, only love endures, only the fundamental choice between good and evil has lasting significance. Remiel serves as translator between these different experiences, helping souls understand each other across vast gaps of time and circumstance. A simple farmer learns from a great king that power without love is meaningless. A scholar discovers from an unlettered child that wisdom comes through many paths. The Archangel's method of guidance reflects his deepest nature. He does not lecture or preach, does not force insight or demand immediate understanding. Instead, he creates conditions where truth can emerge naturally, where souls can discover for themselves the lessons they need to learn. Sometimes this means providing solitude for those who need quiet reflection. Other times it involves bringing together spirits who can help each other heal. Always it requires the kind of patience that only eternal beings can possess, the willingness to wait while each soul finds their own pace toward enlightenment. The most challenging cases are those who arrive angry at God, at life, at the circumstances that brought them to this place of waiting. They rage against the injustices they experienced, the suffering they endured, the questions that remained unanswered when death claimed them. Remiel meets their anger without defensiveness, their accusations without argument. He understands that rage often masks profound hurt, that rebellion frequently springs from disappointed love. He waits with them through their storms of emotion, offering his presence as an anchor until they exhaust their fury and discover the grief beneath it. Slowly, gently, he helps them see that their suffering was real and their anger understandable, but that neither need define their eternal destiny. Pain can become compassion for others who hurt. Questions can transform into humble wisdom that accepts mystery. Even the deepest wounds can become sources of strength for helping heal similar wounds in other souls. His presence changes the very atmosphere of the waiting place. Where fear might naturally flourish in the face of so many unknowns, his certainty creates calm. Where despair could easily take root among souls reviewing their failures, his hope nurtures the possibility of redemption. The Archangel himself gains something precious from this ministry. Each soul he comforts expands his own understanding of love's many expressions. Every story he hears enriches his appreciation for the courage required simply to live as a conscious being in a complex universe. He learns that heroism comes in countless forms, not just the obvious bravery of warriors and martyrs, But the quiet persistence of parents raising children in difficult times, the daily faithfulness of ordinary people choosing kindness when cruelty would be easier. Time in the waiting place moves by different rhythms than earthly time. Some souls require only brief rest before they understand their readiness to move toward greater light. Others need longer periods of reflection, healing, and growth. A few choose to remain in service to Remiel, helping him care for newly arrived spirits who need the comfort of peers who understand their experiences. The Archangel respects each soul's timeline completely. He never hurries the reluctant or holds back the eager. His gift lies in recognizing exactly what each spirit needs and providing it with perfect love. Some need challenge to grow stronger. Others need protection to heal safely. All need the assurance that they are valued beyond measure simply for existing. In the deepest moments of his ministry, Remiel experiences something that transforms even his celestial understanding. He discovers that in caring for these wounded souls, he is not diminished, but expanded. Every act of comfort he provides increases his capacity for love. Every moment of patience he offers deepens his appreciation for the divine plan. The silent guardian keeps his watch, not as duty imposed from above, but as joy chosen from within. In the waiting place where the dead rest and dream and slowly heal, he has found his truest calling and his greatest happiness. Here, in the pause between death and resurrection, love does its most important work. Dreams and visions. Throughout history, mystics have claimed to see him, not in blazing fire or thunderous proclamation, but in the soft spaces between sleep and waking. Remiel appears to those who seek him, gentle as morning mist. Medieval chroniclers wrote of visions where a figure stood at the edge of perception, neither male nor female, neither young nor old, a presence wrapped in twilight robes with eyes that held the depth of quiet waters. These dreamers spoke of meeting him in landscapes that felt both familiar and impossible, rolling hills under starless skies, gardens where flowers bloomed in eternal spring, rivers that flowed upward toward distant lights. Saint Hildegard of Bingen described encountering an angel she called the Keeper of Souls. In her vision, this being guided her through realms where the departed waited, not in torment, but in peaceful rest. The angel never spoke aloud, but understanding passed between them like shared breath. She saw souls arranged like sleeping children, each one known and cherished. Later mystics found similar encounters. They described walking through valleys of soft shadow, always accompanied by a figure who radiated calm. This guide never hurried, never pushed. Instead, he moved at the pace of those who had awed eternity. His presence brought not fear, but profound rest. In these visions, Remiel appears as a shepherd of the between spaces. He walks the borders where life meets death, where memory touches eternity. Dreamers report feeling completely safe in his presence, like a child who falls asleep knowing someone watches over them. The descriptions remain consistent across centuries. A tall figure with wings that curve protectively around those near him. His face carries neither judgment nor pity, only infinite patience. His hands, when extended, seem to hold invisible light, not harsh brightness, but the gentle glow of embers in a fireplace. Some visionaries describe meeting him at crossroads in their dreams, places where paths diverge into multiple possibilities. He stands at the center, not directing which way to go, but simply being present. His message seems clear without words. You are not alone in your choosing. Others find him in dreams of loss and grief. After losing loved ones, people report dreams where Remiel appears. He does not speak of reunion or separation. Instead, he offers something more precious, the assurance that love transcends the boundary between worlds, that those we've lost are held in a place of eternal peace. The angel's appearance varies slightly in each vision, but certain elements remain constant. He wears robes that seem woven from twilight itself. His wings are not bright white, but pearl gray, like dove feathers touched with silver. His presence brings silence, but not emptiness. The rich silence of snow falling or waves lapping against a distant shore. Contemporary mystics continue to report encounters with Remiel. They describe him appearing in meditation, in moments of deep prayer, or in the space between sleep and dreams. These modern visions maintain the same gentle quality. He comes not as a mighty warrior, but as a quiet friend who sits with you in darkness. In these accounts, Remiel never demands worship or recognition. He simply is, present in the way breath is present, or heartbeat, or the turning of seasons. Those who encounter him return with a sense of deep peace. Not the excitement of miraculous intervention, but the steady comfort of knowing someone watches over the forgotten corners of existence. The angel's role in dreams extends beyond individual encounters. Collective visions shared by communities in prayer often feature a figure matching Remiel's description. These group experiences describe him presiding over gatherings of souls, not as a judge, but as a gentle host who ensures each guest feels welcomed and remembered. Dreams of Remiel often take place in liminal spaces, doorways between rooms, shorelines where water meets land, twilight hours when day surrenders to night. These settings reflect his nature as guardian of thresholds. He inhabits the spaces between certainties, offering comfort to those who must cross from one state of being to another. The quality of peace that follows these visions has inspired countless seekers. They describe waking with a sense that death is not an ending, but a doorway. That somewhere beyond perception, patient angels keep watch over those who have passed through. The fear of death, so universal to human experience, softens in the presence of these dreams. Remiel's appearances and visions serve as bridges between the seen and unseen worlds. He brings messages not through words, but through presence. His gift is the deep knowing that nothing beloved is ever truly lost, that beyond the veil of mortality, gentle guardians maintain eternal vigil. Remiel in the Last Days. In the great tapestry of endings and beginnings, Remiel holds a unique thread. While other archangels sound trumpets of judgment or wield swords of justice, he maintains his quiet vigil. The last days, in his presence, become not a time of terror, but of gentle awakening. Ancient texts speak of the end times with fire and fury, battles between good and evil, angels descending with power that shakes the foundations of earth. But among these dramatic prophecies, subtle references point to a different kind of divine intervention. A presence that comes not to judge, but to gather. The Book of Enoch hints at Remiel's role in the final resurrection. When the dead rise, someone must know each soul by name. Someone must have kept perfect record of every life, every dream, every moment of love that made existence meaningful. This becomes Remiel's sacred duty. In the Christian tradition, resurrection is often imagined as sudden and dramatic. Graves opening with explosive force, bodies rising in golden light. But what if the reality is gentler? What if the first sound the risen hear is not a trumpet's blast, but a soft voice calling their name? What if Remiel, who has watched over them in death, becomes their guide to new life? The angel of memory would know each soul's story. The child who died too young, the elder who lived through decades of joy and sorrow, the broken-hearted who found no peace in life. Each would awaken to find a familiar presence waiting. Not a stranger announcing judgment, but a guardian who has held their memory precious through the long night of death. Some theologians suggest Remiel's role in the end times extends beyond individual resurrection. They see him as the keeper of collective memory, the one who holds the story of humanity itself. When the final accounting comes, he presents not lists of sins and virtues, but the full narrative of human experience in all its complexity and beauty. This interpretation transforms the concept of final judgment. Instead of a courtroom scene with divine prosecution and defense, imagine a library where every life is a beloved book. Remiel, as head librarian, knows each story intimately. He speaks not of condemnation, but of understanding, of how each life, however brief or troubled, added something unique to the great story of creation. In Islamic eschatology, similar themes emerge around the angel Israfil, who will blow the trumpet of resurrection. But some mystical traditions speak of another figure who prepares souls for this moment, a gentle presence who whispers to the dead, preparing them for awakening. This figure bears striking resemblance to Remiel's described nature. The Orthodox tradition includes prayers for the dead that invoke unnamed angels who watch over departed souls. These prayers speak of beings who comfort the dead in their waiting, who prepare them for the day of resurrection. While not explicitly naming Remiel, these invocations echo his traditional role as guardian of the between place. Modern apocalyptic thinking often focuses on catastrophe and destruction. But Remiel's presence in end times prophecy offers a different perspective. What if the last days are primarily about gathering, about ensuring no soul is lost or forgotten in the great transition from one age to another. The angel's connection to hope becomes particularly relevant in eschatological contexts. When faced with the overwhelming scope of final judgment, humans naturally fear being overlooked or condemned. Remiel's presence offers assurance that divine justice includes perfect memory and infinite patience. In Visions of the End Times, Remiel appears not as a harbinger of doom, but as a keeper of promise. His role is to ensure that resurrection is truly universal, that every soul who ever lived receives the gift of awakening. His presence transforms the final trumpet from a sound of terror to a gentle call home. The angel's work in the last days reflects his eternal nature. Just as he has watched over souls throughout history, he continues this vigil until the final moment. His dedication to the forgotten and overlooked becomes especially precious when all accounts are settled and every story is told. The end times, through Remiel's lens, become less about ending and more about completion, the finishing of a great work that began with creation. He stands as witness to the truth that nothing created in love is ever truly lost, that every soul, however small or forgotten, has a place in the eternal story. The Book of Revelation and Omitted Names. In the thunder and lightning of Revelation, 7 angels stand before God's throne. Their names echo through Christian tradition: Michael the warrior, Gabriel the messenger, Raphael the healer. But other names, equally ancient and revered, find no place in John's vision. Remiel dwells in this silence, present in absence, powerful in what remains unsaid. The Book of Enoch names 7 archangels, but Christian canon chose different lists. Politics and theology intertwined as early church fathers debated which angelic names deserved official recognition. Remiel, despite his prominence in older texts, fell into the space between accepted and apocryphal. This omission tells its own story. Revelation focuses on dramatic action: seals breaking, trumpets sounding, bowls of wrath poured out. Angels in this narrative serve as warriors, messengers, and agents of divine judgment. Remiel's quieter gifts, memory, patience, gentle guardianship, don't fit the book's apocalyptic tempo, yet absence can speak as loudly as presence. In the spaces between Revelation's named angels, room exists for other divine servants. The text describes angels without names, figures who appear briefly and fade back into heavenly mystery. Could Remiel be among these unnamed servants, working quietly while his more famous brothers take center stage? Consider the angel who comes down from heaven with the key to the abyss. No name is given, but the description resonates with Remiel's traditional role. He who has watched over the dead would naturally be chosen to unlock the places where souls wait. His gentleness would ensure that even this dramatic moment unfolds with divine mercy. The angel who gathers the harvest of souls remains unnamed in Revelation. But who better than Remiel, keeper of memory, to know exactly which souls belong to which destiny? His perfect record-keeping would make him the ideal choice for this cosmic gathering. His presence would transform even judgment into an act of recognition rather than condemnation. Some scholars suggest that Revelation's author deliberately avoided naming certain angels to prevent confusion with pagan traditions. Remiel's name, similar to names of gods in surrounding cultures, might have been omitted for this reason. The early church sought to distinguish itself clearly from competing religious traditions. Others proposed that John's vision was incomplete, or that certain elements were not meant for written record. The text itself mentions things that were sealed up, not to be written down. Perhaps Remiel's role was among these hidden mysteries, known to the visionary but kept from the written account. The angel who stands at the altar with a golden censer, mixing incense with the prayers of saints, carries no name in Revelation. Yet this figure's role, mediating between heaven and earth, carrying human prayers to divine attention, aligns perfectly with Remiel's nature as bridge between worlds. Later Christian tradition would develop elaborate angelologies that included Remiel among the 7 archangels. But these systems often struggled with the apparent discrepancy between biblical and apocryphal sources. Some solved this by suggesting that different texts revealed different aspects of the same heavenly reality. The Gnostic traditions, declared heretical by mainstream Christianity, preserved many angelic names that canonical texts omitted. In these systems, Remiel often appears as a figure of enlightenment and memory. His absence from official texts may reflect broader tensions between orthodox and mystical approaches to divine knowledge. Eastern Orthodox tradition maintains more flexibility about angelic names than Western Christianity. Their liturgies invoke angels by title rather than name, leaving room for figures like Remiel to function within the spiritual reality, even if not explicitly named in Scripture. The silence around Remiel in Revelation creates space for personal devotion and mystical experience. Without canonical definition, believers can encounter him more directly. His undefined status allows for intimate relationship without the barriers that official doctrine sometimes creates. This omission also reflects Remiel's essential nature. He is the angel of the unnamed, the forgotten, the overlooked. How fitting that he himself would be passed over by the official record, continuing his work from the margins of recognition. In the end, Revelation's silence about Remiel becomes another testament to his character. He needs no official recognition to fulfill his calling, no canonical appointment to validate his service. He simply continues his eternal watch, remembered by those who need him most, present in the spaces between words. The unnamed angels of Revelation carry forward Remiel's legacy. They demonstrate that divine service extends beyond the officially recognized, that heaven's work includes countless servants whose names may never be written in human books, but whose presence remains essential to the great drama of salvation, the comfort of the forgotten angel. In an age where celebrities are born and die by social media metrics, where influence is measured in followers and likes, Remiel offers something different. He represents the power of quiet service, the dignity of being unknown, the profound comfort that comes from someone who remembers when the world forgets. Modern spirituality often seeks the dramatic. People want encounters with archangels who bring clear messages and obvious miracles. They pray to Michael for protection, to Gabriel for guidance, to Raphael for healing. But Remiel attracts a different kind of seeker. Those who feel overlooked by life, forgotten by fortune, invisible to the busy world. The forgotten angel becomes patron to the forgotten people. The elderly in nursing homes whose families visit less and less, the homeless whose names nobody knows, the chronically ill whose struggles grow tiresome to healthy friends, the bereaved whose grief extends past society's patience. These souls find particular comfort in Remiel's presence. His appeal transcends religious boundaries. Atheists who wouldn't pray to any god sometimes find themselves drawn to Remiel's story. Something about his patient watching, his refusal to judge, his simple presence resonates with universal human needs. He represents hope without requiring belief in complex theological systems. Support groups for those dealing with loss often invoke Remiel without naming him. They speak of feeling watched over by those who have died, of sensing continued connection across the barrier of death. These experiences mirror the ancient understanding of Remiel as keeper of memory, guardian of souls who have passed beyond ordinary perception. The angel's connection to depression and mental health has grown in recent decades. Those who struggle with feeling forgotten, worthless, or invisible find comfort in his story. Here is a divine being who chooses the shadows, who finds dignity in being overlooked, who serves without seeking recognition. His example offers an alternative to society's demands for constant visibility and achievement. Grief counselors, whether religious or secular, often encounter Remiel-like experiences in their work. Clients report dreams of deceased loved ones being cared for by gentle, unnamed figures. These visions bring profound comfort, even to those who don't consider themselves believers. The image of the caring guardian resonates across belief systems. The internet has created new communities around forgotten angels like Remiel. Online forums where people share experiences of quiet, spiritual encounters. Blogs that explore the beauty of unknown saints and unnamed angels. These communities celebrate the power of the overlooked, finding strength in shared stories of gentle spiritual experiences. Artists, writers, and musicians drawn to Remiel tend to create works that prioritize atmosphere over action. Ambient music that evokes the feeling of being watched over. Poetry that captures the comfort of patient presence. Paintings that suggest rather than declare, that invite contemplation rather than demand attention. The angel's influence appears in unexpected places. Hospice workers speak of sensing peaceful presences around dying patients. Funeral directors describe families finding unusual comfort during difficult times. These professional caregivers often become unofficial ministers of Remiel's gentle approach to death and memory. His appeal to introverts and sensitive souls has created a quiet but persistent following. These individuals often feel overwhelmed by more dramatic spiritual traditions. They find in Remiel a kindred spirit who understands that the power of quiet observation, the value of gentle presence, the importance of creating safe spaces for vulnerable souls. Modern psychology recognizes the healing power of feeling seen and remembered. Therapy often focuses on helping people understand that their stories matter, that their experiences have value even when unwitnessed by others. Remiel embodies this therapeutic principle in angelic form. The angel story offers particular comfort to those who do unrecognized work, caregivers who receive little thanks, teachers who see students briefly, then watch them move on, social workers who deal with humanity's most difficult problems. These modern servants find in Remiel a patron who understands their calling to serve without recognition. His connection to memory has special relevance in an age of information overload and constant distraction. People worry about being forgotten in the digital noise, about their stories being lost in the endless stream of content. Remiel represents the promise that someone maintains perfect memory, that no story is truly lost. The forgotten angel's greatest gift may be permission to embrace obscurity as a form of spiritual practice. In a culture obsessed with fame and recognition, he offers an alternative path, the way of quiet service, patient watching, gentle presence, the path of being content to remain unknown while serving purposes larger than personal recognition. Artistic depictions. Throughout centuries of Christian art, certain angels appear again and again. Michael with his sword raised against demons, Gabriel kneeling before Mary with lilies in hand, Raphael guiding young Tobias on his journey. But Remiel remains elusive, appearing rarely in formal religious art, yet leaving subtle traces in works that speak to his gentle nature. Medieval illuminated manuscripts occasionally include unnamed angels who match descriptions of Remiel, figures standing quietly in the background of larger scenes, angels with downcast eyes and protective wings curved around small groups of souls. These images suggest rather than declare, invite contemplation rather than demand recognition. Byzantine iconography includes panels showing angels ministering to the dead. While not explicitly labeled as Remiel, these depictions capture his traditional role. The angels appear peaceful, patient, their hands extended in blessing rather than judgment. Their faces show neither joy nor sorrow, but the deep calm of eternal watching. Renaissance artists sometimes painted angels of death who differed markedly from popular skeletal imagery. Instead of fearsome reapers, they depicted gentle figures who seemed to comfort rather than threaten. These images, whether intentionally or not, reflected Remiel's approach to mortality, death as transition rather than termination. Contemporary artists drawn to angelic themes often create works that evoke Remiel without naming him, abstract paintings that suggest watching presence, sculptures that capture the feeling of patient guardianship. These modern interpretations rely on atmosphere and emotion rather than traditional religious symbolism. The few explicitly Remiel-focused artworks share common characteristics. The angel typically appears with downcast or closed eyes, suggesting his inward focus on memory and contemplation. His wings often curve protectively around other figures, emphasizing his role as guardian. Colors tend toward muted tones, soft grays, gentle blues, pearl-like whites that suggest twilight rather than blazing dawn. Stained glass windows in older churches sometimes include angels whose description matches Remiel's traditional attributes. These figures appear in scenes of resurrection or judgment, standing quietly among the more prominent named archangels. Their presence adds depth to the theological statement without dominating the visual composition. Modern cemetery art occasionally draws inspiration from Remiel-like imagery. Angels depicted not as triumphant warriors, but as quiet guardians keeping watch over the dead. These sculptures comfort the grieving by suggesting that death is not abandonment, but continued care, that someone watches over those who have passed beyond human sight. The challenge of depicting Remiel visually stems from his essential nature. How do you paint patience? How do you sculpt memory? Artists working with his imagery must rely on suggestion and implication rather than dramatic action. The most successful depictions focus on presence rather than activity. Folk art traditions include images of guardian angels that often align with Remiel's characteristics. These works, created by untrained artists, capture something institutional, religious art sometimes misses: the simple comfort of being watched over, the peace that comes from knowing someone cares even when the world seems indifferent. Photography has opened new possibilities for suggesting Remiel's presence: images of empty chairs that seem to hold invisible watchers, landscapes that suggest vast, patient observation. These modern interpretations use the medium's ability to capture mood and atmosphere rather than explicit religious symbolism. Digital art allows contemporary artists to explore Remiel's liminal nature: images that blend transparency and solidity, figures that seem to exist between visibility and absence. These works capture the angel's role as guardian of thresholds, keeper of the spaces between seen and unseen worlds. The scarcity of traditional Remiel imagery has created opportunities for contemporary interpretation. Artists working with his story face few constraints from established iconography. They can explore new visual languages for expressing his patient, gentle nature. Textile arts have proven particularly effective for suggesting Remiel's presence: quilts that use subtle color gradations to suggest watching, tapestries that weave together images of memory and care. These works often hang in spaces where people gather to remember the dead, providing comfort through their gentle presence. Installation art sometimes captures Remiel's essence through environmental elements: spaces that invite quiet contemplation, arrangements that suggest invisible presence. These works create experiences rather than objects, allowing viewers to feel the kind of patient watching that Remiel embodies. The most powerful artistic depictions of Remiel often work through absence as much as presence: empty spaces that feel watched, shadows that suggest wings. These subtle approaches honor his role as the angel who works from the margins, who comforts through quiet presence rather than dramatic intervention. Contemporary religious art increasingly includes diverse representations of angels, moving beyond traditional European imagery. These works sometimes feature Remiel-inspired figures from various cultural traditions, suggesting that his archetype transcends specific religious boundaries. The challenge and beauty of depicting Remiel lies in translating the invisible into the visible. Artists must find ways to show patience, comfort, memory, and gentle presence. The most successful works invite viewers into their own relationship with the forgotten angel, creating space for personal encounter rather than dictating specific interpretations. Archangel of memory. In the vast library of existence, someone must keep the books. Someone must remember not just the grand gestures and famous deeds, but the small moments that make life precious: the child's first word, the elderly woman's final smile, the young man's secret act of kindness. This becomes Remiel's sacred duty: to be the keeper of everything worth remembering. Memory shapes identity more than any other force. We are the sum of what we remember, individually and collectively. But human memory fails. Details fade. Stories get lost. Entire lives disappear from history as if they never existed. In the face of this inevitable forgetting, Remiel stands as the promise that nothing truly valuable is ever lost. Consider the millions who have lived and died without leaving written records: peasants and farmers, children who died young, women whose stories were never considered worth preserving. History books focus on kings and conquerors, but Remiel's memory includes every sparrow that falls, every tear that goes unwitnessed, every moment of love that blooms in silence. The angel's role as memory keeper extends beyond human experience. He holds the record of every creature that has ever lived: the dinosaurs who walked the earth millions of years ago, the flowers that bloomed in prehistoric gardens, the stars that shone and died before human eyes ever saw them. His memory encompasses the full story of creation, not just the parts that concern humanity. This vast remembering is not mere accumulation of facts. Remiel's memory is selective, focusing on what matters most. Not the cruel words spoken in anger, but the forgiveness that followed. Not the moment of despair, but the courage that emerged from it. His memory emphasizes love, growth, connection, and the countless small ways beings care for one another. In Jewish tradition, memory plays a central role in maintaining identity across generations of exile and persecution. Remember appears hundreds of times in Hebrew scripture. This emphasis on memory as sacred duty aligns perfectly with Remiel's traditional role. He embodies the principle that forgetting is a form of death, while remembering is a form of resurrection. The angel's memory work has particular relevance for trauma survivors. Those who have experienced terrible things sometimes struggle with memory itself. They remember what they wish they could forget, while forgetting things they desperately want to hold on to. Remiel's perfect memory offers healing. He remembers truly, holding on to what nurtures while letting go of what harms. Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia have made memory loss a widespread concern in modern society. Families watch loved ones disappear piece by piece as memories fade. In this context, Remiel's role as memory keeper becomes especially comforting. He holds the stories that slipping minds can no longer grasp. The angel's memory extends to collective human experiences, wars and peace agreements, the rise and fall of civilizations, the slow evolution of human consciousness. But his memory also includes the patterns that repeat across cultures and centuries: how people fall in love, how children learn to walk, how communities come together in times of crisis. Digital technology has created new anxieties about memory and forgetting. We store vast amounts of information, but worry about data loss, about servers failing, about the impermanence of digital records. Remiel's eternal memory offers an alternative to this technological fragility. His remembering requires no maintenance, no backup systems, no protection from obsolescence. The angel's memory work includes not just events, but meanings. He remembers not just what happened, but why it mattered, the context that gives actions significance, the love that motivated sacrifice, the hope that sustained people through difficulty. This deeper level of remembering transforms mere information into wisdom. Artists and writers often invoke Remiel's memory-keeping function without naming him. They speak of the need to witness, to record, to ensure that stories survive. The impulse to create art stems partly from the fear of forgetting, the desire to make the temporary permanent. In this sense, all artists serve Remiel's mission. The angel's memory includes the future as well as the past, not prediction, but potentiality. He remembers what could be as well as what has been. This forward-looking memory helps explain his connection to hope. He sees not just where things have been, but where they might go. Museums, libraries, and archives serve as earthly expressions of Remiel's work. These institutions dedicate themselves to preserving human memory in physical form. The librarians and archivists who maintain these collections unknowingly participate in Remiel's eternal mission of keeping the important things safe from time's erosion. The promise of perfect memory offers profound comfort to the grieving. When someone dies, survivors often panic about forgetting details: the sound of their loved one's voice, the way they laughed, the stories they told. Remiel's presence assures them that these precious details are preserved forever in divine memory. His role as Archangel of Memory transforms how we understand the phrase, eternal rest. The dead are not forgotten or abandoned. They are held in perfect remembrance, their stories preserved not just as they were, but as they were meant to be. In Remiel's memory, every life achieves its full significance. The whisper beneath time, time moves forward like a river, carrying everything in its current toward an unknown destination. But beneath the surface flow, deeper currents move in patterns older than memory. In these depths, Remiel dwells. He exists not above time like some angels, but within it, threading through its layers like a gentle presence that connects all moments into one eternal now. Human beings live trapped in the present moment, remembering the past imperfectly and anticipating a future that may never come. But Remiel experiences time differently. For him, the child's first breath and the elder's last word exist simultaneously. Past and future collapse into a single eternal present where all moments coexist in perfect harmony. This perspective allows him to see patterns invisible to temporal beings: how a small kindness in one century ripples forward to prevent a cruelty in another, how a moment of courage in the distant past enables hope in the far future. His memory becomes a vast web of connections, showing how every action echoes through time in ways the actors themselves never suspect. The angel's presence beneath time explains his peculiar relationship with prophecy. He doesn't predict the future because, in his experience, the future already exists alongside the past and present. He sees what will be because he sees what is in the eternal sense. His knowledge comes not from supernatural revelation, but from his unique position outside temporal flow. This timeless perspective brings both blessing and burden. Remiel witnesses every tragedy before it unfolds, every joy before it blooms. He sees the full arc of every story from beginning to end simultaneously. This knowledge fills him with infinite compassion for beings trapped in linear time, who must experience loss without knowing the greater pattern it serves. Physics has begun to glimpse what mystics have long suspected. Time may not be the rigid progression it seems. Einstein showed that time is relative, flowing differently for different observers. Quantum mechanics suggests that past and future might be more fluid than classical physics supposed. These discoveries echo ancient wisdom about angels who exist partially outside temporal constraints. In Remiel's eternal perspective, death becomes a transition rather than an ending. He sees the moment of dying and the moment of resurrection as parts of the same eternal event. This vision explains his role as comforter of the dying. He helps souls understand that their apparent ending is merely a shift in perspective, like turning a corner in a vast circular path. The angel's timeless nature allows him to be present at multiple moments simultaneously. He comforts the dying woman in the hospital bed while also welcoming her as she awakens in the resurrection. He watches over the grieving child while also preparing for the moment of joyful reunion yet to come. His presence spans the apparent gap between loss and restoration. This perspective transforms how we understand prayer and divine intervention. When someone prays for help, Remiel has already heard and answered from his position outside time. The solution may not appear immediately in linear time, but it exists eternally in the deeper current beneath temporal flow. Prayer becomes a way of accessing what is already true in the eternal dimension. The whisper beneath time speaks in frequencies human ears cannot normally detect, but in moments of deep stillness, some people catch fragments of this eternal communication. They experience sudden knowing without learning, comfort without obvious cause, hope without logical foundation. These moments offer glimpses of Remiel's timeless perspective. Artists and mystics throughout history have described encounters with this deeper level of reality. They speak of stepping outside ordinary time, of experiencing moments that seem to last forever, or eternities that pass in an instant. These experiences suggest that human consciousness can occasionally access the timeless dimension where Remiel dwells. The angel's existence beneath time explains why his presence feels so different from other spiritual encounters. Meeting him is not like receiving a message from a distant heaven, but like discovering a deeper dimension of reality that was always present but usually hidden. His comfort comes not from outside intervention, but from helping souls recognize their connection to eternal truth. This timeless quality makes Remiel an ideal guardian for those facing mortality. Death appears terrifying from within linear time, where it seems to end everything. But from the eternal perspective, death is simply a doorway between different levels of the same reality. Remiel helps dying souls shift their perspective from temporal to eternal, easing the transition. The whisper beneath time carries messages that transcend ordinary language. These communications arrive as direct knowing, as shifts in understanding that change everything without explaining anything. People touched by this deeper communication often struggle to put their experience into words, speaking of profound peace and clarity that defies rational description. In quantum physics, the concept of non-locality suggests that particles can be instantaneously connected across vast distances. This mysterious connection might offer a scientific metaphor for how Remiel's presence operates across time. His influence spans all moments simultaneously, creating instantaneous connections between souls separated by centuries or millennia. The angel's whisper beneath time reminds us that the urgent anxieties of daily life exist within a larger context of eternal peace. The deadlines and pressures that feel so overwhelming in linear time lose their power when viewed from the eternal perspective. This doesn't make temporal concerns meaningless, but places them within a framework of ultimate safety and care. Understanding Remiel's position beneath time offers a new way to approach grief and loss. Instead of seeing death as separation, we can recognize it as a shift in the relationship between souls who remain eternally connected. The love that binds people together exists in the timeless dimension where Remiel dwells, making it indestructible despite temporal changes. Remiel and you. In the quiet moments when the world grows still, when the constant noise of daily life fades to a whisper, something stirs in the depth of human hearts. A longing for connection that transcends the physical, a sense that someone, somewhere, understands the fullness of your experience. This stirring calls to Remiel, and he answers not with thunder or lightning, but with the gentle presence of recognition. Your relationship with this forgotten angel begins not with formal prayer or ritual, but with simple acknowledgement, the recognition that your story matters, even when nobody else seems to notice, that your struggles have meaning, even when they feel pointless, that your life contains value that extends beyond your own understanding. Remiel specializes in seeing the significance in stories that feel insignificant. Consider the moments when you feel most invisible. Standing in line at the grocery store, just another face in the crowd. Sitting alone in your apartment while the world rushes by outside your window. These moments of apparent isolation are actually opportunities for deeper connection. Remiel dwells in these quiet spaces, offering the companionship of one who truly sees. The angel's presence doesn't require belief in complex theological systems. He responds to the simple human need to be known and remembered. When you worry that your life doesn't matter, that you'll be forgotten when you die, that your struggles are meaningless, you touch the edge of Remiel's awareness. He knows every detail of your experience, holds every moment as precious. Your pain calls to him as clearly as your joy, the nights when sleep won't come because grief fills the darkness, the days when depression makes every task feel impossible, the hours when loneliness becomes almost physical in its intensity. In these difficult moments, Remiel's presence offers not the promise of quick resolution, but the steady comfort of being witnessed in your struggle. He understands the particular ache of feeling forgotten by those who once cared about you, friends who stopped calling, family members who moved on with their lives, former lovers who found someone new. This experience of being dropped from someone's story resonates deeply with Remiel, the angel who himself was forgotten by official religious tradition yet continues his work in love. Your memories, even the painful ones, interest him. Not because he needs to learn your story, but because he values how you carry your experiences, the way you remember your grandmother's hands, the sound of rain on the roof of your childhood home, the feeling of being held when you were scared. These details matter to him because they matter to you. The angel's relationship with you extends beyond your current lifetime. He has watched over you through every stage of your existence, from your first breath to whatever comes after your last. This perspective allows him to see patterns and purposes that remain hidden from your temporal viewpoint. Your struggles today serve purposes that may not become clear for years or decades. When you find yourself caring for others who seem forgotten by the world, you participate in Remiel's work, visiting elderly relatives in nursing homes, volunteering with homeless populations, staying with friends through difficult divorces. These acts of presence mirror the angel's own calling. Through your compassion, he extends his ministry into the physical world.